The tray was a lie. It weighed maybe 15 pounds, holding 2 ribeyes and a porterhouse, but the real weight was the $312 I still needed for next month's rent, that, and the 50-odd bucks for the light bill, and the fact that my left shoe had a crack in the sole that was letting in the October rain. My name is Naya Delgado. I'm 23 years old, and my life was measured in 8-hour shifts at the Black Harbor Steakhouse, hauling plates of overpriced beef to people who didn't know what a cracked shoe sole felt like. Port Garrison isn't a kind city. It's a harbor town that smells like salt, diesel, and old money. I was just trying to stack enough of that money to get out of my mold-laced studio apartment and maybe, just maybe, go back to school. Delgado Table 7 needs a new set of silvers. And why is Table 4's water glass half empty? Are we paying you to daydream? That was Trent Barlow, my shift manager. A man whose personality was as greasy as the onion rings he compulsively snacked on in the back office. For months, he'd been my personal shadow of misery. He'd set my KPIs, key performance indicators, a fancy term for ways to make your life hell, at 30% higher than anyone else's. He'd make comments just loud enough for me to hear. Something about my spicy attitude, always with a smirk that never reached his dead, piggy eyes. He knew I couldn't afford to quit. He fed on it. "On it, Trent," I said, my voice flat. I didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. I swapped the silvers, filled the water, and kept moving. Every step was a calculation. One more table, one more generous tip, $1 closer to leaving. Then the bell above the door chimed, cutting through the low roar of dinner service and the sound of the storm lashing against the windows. 3 men walked in. They weren't our usual crowd. Our usual was finance guys trying to impress clients or couples on awkward anniversaries. These men were different. They wore identical, ill-fitting gray suits that looked expensive but uncomfortable. They moved like a single unit, their shoulders broad, their eyes sweeping the room with a cold, proprietary air. They didn't wait to be seated. They walked right past the hostess stand and pointed to the VIP booth, booth 12, the one with the high back and the view of the churning, rain-slicked harbor. "That table is reserved," our hostess, a college kid named Mandy, squeaked. The man in the middle, the thickest one, just smiled. He didn't say a word. He just pulled out a thick clip of cash and peeled off a $100 bill, dropping it on her stand. "It's unreserved now." Mandy looked at Trent, who had materialized like a bad smell. He saw the 100, then saw the men, and any spine he might have had turned to jelly. "Of course. Gentlemen, right this way. Delgado, take booth 12. My stomach tightened. I hated booth 12. It was Trent's favorite way to punish me. It was isolated, demanding, and the tips were often inverse to the ego of the clientele. I plastered on my server's smile. "Good evening, gentlemen. Can I start you with some drinks?" "Whiskey, the good stuff. 3 glasses and bottles." "Leave them," the leader said, not even looking at me. He and his friends were already pulling out phones, talking in low, rough voices. They were part of the new noise in Port Garrison, the whispers about the docks, the Calder Syndicate. People called them. They moved cargo. What kind of cargo? Nobody asked twice. I brought the drinks. Before I could even set the tray down, the leader snapped his fingers. "We're hungry. We want 3 of whatever that is." He jabbed a thick finger toward table 5, where a family was celebrating a birthday over our largest platter, the harbor master. "That's the harbor master, sir. It serves 4 to 6. "I don't care what it serves. I care that you bring it, now, and tell the kitchen to make it fast. We're not here to wait. All other orders are ahead of yours, sir, but I'll put it in right." "No," he leaned forward, his voice dropping. "You'll put it in first. Tell the cook. Calder's men are here. He'll understand." I looked at Trent. He was already nodding frantically, waving his hand at me. "Do it, Delgado. Make it happen." I felt the familiar burn of humiliation. I went to the kitchen, slid the ticket to our chef, Marco, and relayed the message. Marco swore under his breath, his dark eyes flashing with anger, but he slammed his cleaver down and shoved 2 other tickets off his board. Calder's men. Damn leeches. Fine, they cut the line. Those 2 tickets were for table 9, a single mom and her kid. A little boy, maybe 3 or 4 years old. The mom looked exhausted, her hair damp from the rain, her coat thin. She'd ordered a simple burger for herself and a glass of milk and some chicken tenders for her son, who was starting to fidget, his little cries getting sharper. He was hungry. I watched as the grill was cleared for the syndicate's massive order. The kids' chicken tenders were pushed to the cold steel corner of the prep station. Forgotten. I walked back to table 9. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. The kitchen is just a little backed up. Can I get your son some crackers while he waits? The milk is on its way?" "Oh, thank you. Honey," she said, her voice strained as she tried to bounce the fussy child on her knee. "He's just so tired. We just got off the bus." I went to the service bar. The milk was there, but before I could grab it, Trent intercepted me. "Booth 12 wants another bottle. Now, Delgado, move. I just need to take this milk to table 9. Trent, the kid is crying." "The kid," he sneered, "isn't paying for this restaurant's liquor license. The gentlemen in booth 12 are... Get them the bottle." I stood there for a second, the white, cold glass of milk in my hand. I looked at the mother, her face etched with worry. I looked at the kid, his face red and blotchy. And I looked at booth 12, where the 3 men were now laughing loudly, tapping their steak knives on the table like impatient toddlers. I made a choice. I walked the milk to table 9. "Here you go, ma'am. His tenders will be right out." The mother's relief was a physical thing. "God, thank you." Delgado Trent's voice was a drill sergeant's bark. I turned. He was purple. My office. Now, before I could move, one of the men in booth 12 stood up. He wasn't the leader, but a younger, meaner-looking one. "Hey, waitress, we ordered a bottle, not milk for some brat." I turned to him, keeping my voice level. "It's on its way, sir. I was just..." He stepped in front of me, blocking my path back to the bar. He was close enough that I could smell the sour whiskey on his breath. He looked past me, at the mother and her child. Then he smiled. "You know what I hate," he said, his voice loud enough for the tables nearby to hear. "I hate a crying kid. Ruins the atmosphere." And with a flick of his wrist, he backhanded the glass of milk out of the mother's hand. It happened in slow motion. The glass seemed to hang in the air for a second before it shattered on the floor. Milk splashed everywhere, all over the mom's coat, all over the floor, and onto the little boy, who was so shocked he stopped crying for a second before letting out a high-pitched, terrified wail. The whole restaurant went silent. The clinking of silverware stopped. The music seemed to fade. The man who did it just laughed, a short, ugly bark. His friends were laughing too. Trent Barlow was at my elbow, hissing. "Apologize to them? Naya, apologize now. Clean this up and apologize for the disturbance." I looked at the mess. I looked at the mother, who was trembling, trying to shield her son, her face pale with shock and fear. I looked at the man, who was still grinning, waiting for me to kneel. Something inside me, the part that had been saving pennies, the part that had endured Trent's insults, the part that was just so goddamn tired it snapped. I turned away from Trent. I walked straight up to booth 12. The men's smiles faded, replaced by surprise. I put my hands on my apron, my voice shaking just a little, but clear and cold as the rain outside. "If you make that child cry again," I said, looking the leader right in the eye, "this meal is free, but you are leaving." You could have heard a pin drop. The leader's eyes widened. The man who'd hit the glass just stared at me, his jaw slack. Trent grabbed my arm. "Naya, what the hell are you doing? Apologize to these men." I shook him off. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at him. No. Then I turned my back on all of them. I walked to the service station, grabbed a stack of clean, dry towels and a new glass. I went back to the bar, poured a new glass of milk myself, and walked it to table 9. I knelt, ignoring the broken glass on the floor, and handed the milk to the mother. "Here," I said softly. Don't you worry about this mess. I started sopping up the spilled milk with the towels, shielding the mother and child with my own body. I'll have Marco remake those tenders. They'll be out in 2 minutes. You little... I heard the scrape of the booth and heavy footsteps. A large hand clamped down on my wrist. It wasn't a touch, it was a vice. The leader of the Greys. He hauled me to my feet. "Who the hell do you think you are?" he growled, his face inches from mine. My heart was rabbiting against my ribs, but I'd spent 7 years in this industry. I knew this move. I didn't pull back. I relaxed my arm, then twisted my elbow up and in toward his thumb, the weakest point of any grip. His grip broke instantly. He grunted in surprise as I stepped back, rubbing my wrist. A few diners had their phones out now, the little red recording lights glowing in the dim restaurant. "Sir," I said, my voice all business, my server mode back in place. "Our restaurant policy, as posted by the door, reserves the right to refuse service to any party that is purposefully disrupting the dining experience of other guests. Intimidating other customers and their children qualifies as a disruption. I will have to ask you to moderate your behavior, or I will call security." "You'll call who?" he sputtered, taking a step toward me. Trent was practically weeping. "Naya, you're fired. You're fired. Security? Get security." The front door opened again. The rain and wind blasted in, making the candles on the tables flicker. A man stood in the doorway, shaking water from a long, perfectly tailored black coat. He was older, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair slicked back and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. He wasn't big like the men in gray, but the air around him was heavy. He closed his umbrella, his movements unhurried, economical. He looked at the scene. He saw me, standing defiant. He saw the goon, poised to grab me again. He saw the crying child, the spilled milk, the phones filming, and Trent sputtering into his walkie-talkie. His eyes, calm and cold, scanned the room for exactly 10 seconds. Then he walked forward, his expensive leather shoes making no sound on the hardwood floor. He stopped not in front of me, but in front of the mother. He spoke, his voice quiet, but it cut through the silence like a razor. "Who made the child cry?" Nobody answered. The men in gray had frozen, their faces turning a pasty white. The leader looked like he'd seen a ghost. I was still holding the wet towels. I nodded my head toward the leader. He knocked over the milk. The man in the black coat didn't look at me. He just turned his head, his gaze landing on his 3 men. They flinched, all 3 of them. "Apologize to her," he said. His voice was still quiet. "To the waitress and to the mother. Then get out." "But, boss," she, the leader, started. "Get out." The shift in power was absolute. It was terrifying. The 3 men, who had owned the room a minute ago, suddenly looked like scolded schoolboys. They scrambled. "Sorry," the leader muttered, not looking at me. "Our apologies. Ma'am?" He fumbled in his pocket and threw another wad of cash on the mother's table. It must have been $500. Then they practically ran out of the restaurant, shoving past each other into the rain. Trent looked baffled. He turned to the man in the black coat, his employee of the month smile clicking into place. "Sir, thank you for handling that. I apologize for my server's behavior. She's being terminated as we speak. Please, can I offer you a table a drink on the house?" The man in the black coat let his eyes drift from Trent's face down to the plastic name tag pinned to his vest. He read it. Trent Barlow. He just said the name. Then he looked back at Trent's face. "We'll deal with this tomorrow." Trent's smile evaporated. The man turned to me. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, black card case. He slid one card out. It was thick, matte black with embossed lettering. He placed it on the hostess counter. "For you," he said. Then, without another word, he turned and walked back out into the storm. My shift didn't end for another 2 hours. My heart was a hummingbird in my chest, but I didn't let my hands shake. I got a dustpan and cleaned up the glass. I put in the new order for table 9, and when it came out, I comped the mom's entire meal. She cried and tried to give me some of the money the Greys had left, but I refused. Just get home safe, I told her. Trent avoided me for the rest of the night, but I felt his eyes on me. I felt everyone's eyes on me. The whispers followed me from table to table. I just kept refilling water glasses, clearing plates, and saying, "Will there be anything else?" At 2:01 in the morning, I finally clocked out. The rain was coming down in sheets, a cold, miserable, driving rain. I pulled my thin jacket tight and started the walk to the bus stop, my cracked shoes squelching in the puddles. As I passed the alley beside the restaurant, I saw it. A black sedan, parked deep in the shadows, its engine off. The windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see inside, but I saw the single, glowing red-orange cherry of a cigarette in the driver's side window. It wasn't a threat. Not yet. It was just a presence. A statement. We are watching. A shiver went down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. I walked faster. I didn't feel safe until I was back in my tiny studio. The 3 deadbolts on my flimsy door locked tight. I sat on my cot, pulling off my soaked shoes, my socks damp and gray. My feet ached. My wrist was already showing a faint purple bruise where the man had grabbed me. I reached into my wet apron pocket. My fingers fumbled against the thick, damp card. I pulled it out. The lettering was stark and elegant. Elias Calderon Harbor Logistics. And below that, just a single string of 10 numbers. No title, no email, just a number. I held it, the weight of it seeming to grow in my hand. I didn't know if it was a reward, a threat, or an invitation. In Port Garrison, it could be all 3 at once. I didn't sleep. How could I? I sat on my cot until the gray, greasy light of Port Garrison seeped through my one window. The black card was on my nightstand, next to my alarm clock. Elias Calderon, Harbor Logistics, a name that acted like a key. Locking and unlocking doors in this city, a man who told my tormentor, "We'll deal with this tomorrow." I must have dozed, because the alarm at 6:30 in the morning felt like a physical blow. My wrist, where the gray-suited man had grabbed me, was a sickly shade of purple and yellow. My shoes were still damp. I stuffed them with wads of newspaper, knowing it wouldn't do much, and hauled myself out the door. I clocked in at 11:02 for the lunch shift. The air in the break room was different. Usually, it just smelled of burnt coffee and industrial soap. Today, it was thick with whispers. Mandy, the young hostess, wouldn't look at me. The other servers kept their distance, huddling by the lockers. Only Marco, the head chef, gave me a look as I passed the kitchen window. It wasn't hostile. It was respect, and maybe a little fear. Then I saw it, taped to the main bulletin board right over the faded Employee of the Month picture of Trent. A single sheet of paper, printed in a hurry. Notice effective immediately. Trent Barlow is no longer an employee of Black Harbor Steakhouse. This decision is final, citing gross violations of professional ethics and company policy. Violations of professional ethics. That was a laugh. Trent had been skimming from the till and harassing the hostesses for as long as I'd worked there, but it took one quiet word from a man in a black coat to make it official. The whispers followed me as I prepped my station. Heard he finally got caught padding the time cards. No, I heard it was a VIP complaint, a really big one. Heard it was her. All eyes slid to me. I wasn't Naya anymore. I was her. Our general manager, Henderson, a nervous man who usually hid in his office doing payroll, was running the floor. He pulled me aside near the ice machine, his hands fluttering. "Naya," he said, adjusting his clip-on tie. His eyes darted everywhere but my face. "About last night, we appreciate your composure, but I need to be very clear. In the future, if a guest is passionate, you must get a manager. We cannot have a repeat of that enthusiasm." "Enthusiasm," I repeated, my voice flat. "You mean when I stopped a customer from terrifying a child?" "It was a very difficult situation," Henderson stammered, his face getting blotchy. "A very high-profile misunderstanding. Mr. Barlow's termination, I should add, was a corporate decision, entirely separate from last night's events. He was a terrible liar. I knew it. He knew I knew it. I expected to feel good. I'd hated Trent. I'd spent shifts fantasizing about him getting fired, about me being the one to hand him his final, pathetic paycheck. But I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt empty and scared. This wasn't justice. This was a demonstration of power. Trent wasn't fired because he was a bully. He was fired because he had annoyed someone much, much bigger. Elias Calderon hadn't just swatted a fly. He'd removed the fly, the branch the fly was on, and the entire tree, just to make a point. And he'd done it using my name as the hammer. My shift was a blur of paranoia. Every time the bell on the door chimed, my head snapped up. Was it the Grays? Was it him? Around 3 o'clock, during the dead lull between lunch and dinner, my cheap burner phone vibrated in my apron pocket. I ducked into the dry storage pantry, surrounded by the smell of olive oil and raw pasta, and checked it. A block number. The message was one sentence. Don't come in for your night shift. Someone is waiting for you. My blood went ice cold. A shiver ran right up my spine. Was it a threat or a warning? Was it from the Grays, the ones I'd humiliated, looking for payback? Or was it from Calderon, protecting his new pet? I felt a wire pull tight in my stomach. Last night I was scared. Tonight I felt controlled. There's a big difference. One is an emotion. The other is a cage. I went straight home, my mind spinning. I was supposed to be back at 5 for the dinner rush. If I skipped, I'd lose the money. Henderson was already spooked. He'd fire me in a second if I was a no-show. When I got to my building, there was a new note taped to my apartment door. Not a threat. Something worse. It was from my landlord. Miss Delgado, due to rising property taxes and urgent building maintenance a lie, the roof had been leaking for 6 months. Rent for Unit 3, B will be increasing by 20% effective the 1st of next month. 20%. I sank onto my cot, the letter crinkling in my hand. That was an impossible number. I'd never make that. Not just by slinging steaks. I was already skipping meals to make ends meet. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a video call. Mama. I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and forced a smile as I hit accept. Her face filled the screen, weathered and kind, the background of her tiny kitchen in Texas grainy and familiar. Naya, mija, how are you? You look skinny. I'm good. Mama, tired, the usual. I'm eating. Don't worry. Her smile faded a little. Listen, Carino, I don't want to worry you, but this storm they're talking about on the news, it's a big one. They're saying we might have to evacuate. I need to get the storm shutters fixed, and I need to buy water and plywood. She didn't have to say the next part. Her voice was already thick with shame for having to ask. How much, I asked, my voice quiet. Just maybe 200 if you can spare it. I know you're saving. My heart cracked. The rent notice, the anonymous text, and now this. Don't worry, Mama, I said, forcing my voice to sound bright. I'll send it. I'll send 300. You get everything you need. Okay, don't you worry about a thing. Oh, Naya, you are such a good daughter. God bless you. We hung up. The smile fell from my face. $300, plus the rent hike. The walls of the room felt like they were shrinking. I was drowning. My eyes landed on the black business card on my nightstand. Elias Calderon, Harbor Logistics. I didn't have a choice. Not really. I grabbed the card and my thin jacket. There was a copy shop 3 blocks away. I felt exposed on the street, my head on a swivel, checking every dark car, every alleyway. Inside the shop, I placed the card on the glass of the big photocopier. My hand was shaking. The bright white light of the scanner flashed over my knuckles, and I watched the tremor. This was me, Naya Delgado, 23 years old, making copies of a Mafia boss's business card because my mom needed plywood and my landlord was a vulture. I made 3 copies. I put one in my shoe, one in my wallet, and one back in my apartment, under the loose floorboard with my tiny stash of emergency cash. I had to go to work. The anonymous text, it was a risk, but not having money was a certainty. I texted Henderson, running late, be there by 6. When I got there, the restaurant was a zoo, a Saturday night crowd, amplified by the tension everyone could feel. I put my head down and just worked. Around 9 o'clock, I was at the bar picking up drinks for table 5 when a woman sat down on the stool right next to my service station. She didn't fit. She wasn't on a date. She wasn't with a bachelorette party. She wore a simple, dark pantsuit and practical shoes. No jewelry except a functional-looking watch. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight, severe bun, and her eyes missed nothing. They were sharp, assessing, and they were locked right on me. "I'll have a club soda. No ice," she said. Her voice was low and gravelly, like she'd smoked for 20 years. I got her the drink. "You're Naya Delgado," she said. It wasn't a question. "Can I get you anything else?" I replied, my server voice kicking in. "Tough night last night," she mused, taking a tiny sip. "I saw the video. You've got guts. Stupid, but gutsy." "I don't know what you're talking about." She smiled, a thin, humorless expression. "I'm Kira Palace." She slid a card across the wet bar. It was plain white, with just a name and a number. "I'm a private investigator. I've been looking into this place for a while. It's a popular spot." "We get good reviews on our steaks," I said, loading my tray. "I'm not here for the steak," Kira said, leaning in, her voice dropping. "I'm here for the receipts. You see a lot from this service station, don't you? Naya, you see who meets who passes what under the table. This place, it's a laundromat, a fancy one with good ribeyes. The Port Garrison Urban Integrity Commission has been trying to get a look inside for a year." My heart hammered against my ribs. This was worse. This wasn't just gangsters. This was government. "I think you have the wrong person," I said, my voice tight. "I'm just a waitress." "Last night, you weren't just a waitress. You were the one who stood up to the Calder Syndicate. And today, your bully of a boss gets fired. That makes you interesting. Naya, that makes you either a target or an asset." "I have to get back to work," I said, lifting my tray. Kira sighed, finishing her soda in one gulp. "Don't be stupid. Calderon doesn't give out favors. He buys leverage. He owns you now, whether you know it or not." I just stared at her. She stood up, putting a $20 bill on the bar for a $4 drink. "Keep the card. When you realize the difference between pride and safety, call me. Answering my questions is a hell of a lot safer than answering his—" She turned and walked out, disappearing into the Saturday night crowd. I didn't finish my shift. At 10:30, I told Henderson I was sick and ran to the back. I couldn't breathe. The whispers of the staff, the shark-like eyes of Kira Palace, the ghost of Elias Calderon, it was too much. I scrambled to the back alley where I kept my bicycle chained to the grease trap. The rain had stopped, but the air was cold and damp, smelling of old fry oil and the sea. There was something on my bike seat. A clear, waterproof document bag. I looked around, my heart leaping into my throat. The alley was empty, save for the hum of the freezers and a single, flickering streetlight. My fingers fumbled with the Ziploc-style seal. Inside were 2 folded sheets of paper. The first was a letter of offer, an employment contract. Position temporary records administrator cashier. Company Harbor Logistics. Salary. The number made me stop breathing. It wasn't triple my pay. It was my entire monthly pay, paid out every single week. It was rent is not a problem money. It was mama don't worry about the storm money. Duration 2 weeks. At the bottom of the contract was the second piece of paper. It was a handwritten note on the same thick black cardstock as his business card. The handwriting was sharp, precise, and elegant. "Just 2 weeks, no more E.C. Elias Calderon?" This was it. This was the real test. My mind screamed, "Run. This is how it starts. You take the money, you do the 2 weeks, and then you're theirs. You're the girl who counts the money, then the girl who moves the money, then the girl who disappears." But my hands held the contract. My phone was full of bills. My mother was in the path of a hurricane. My reason told me to throw it in the dumpster. My empty bank account told me to sign it. I pulled out my burner phone. I still had the number from the black card. My fingers, the same ones that had been shaking at the copy shop, typed out a message. I deleted it. I typed another. Finally, I just wrote, "I will come for an interview." That's it. No commitment. I hit send. A reply came back in less than 10 seconds. It wasn't words. It was an address and a time. Pier 17, tomorrow, 9 a.m. I wheeled my bike home, the contract heavy in my backpack. I made it to my apartment just before midnight. I locked the 3 bolts, leaned my bike against the peeling wallpaper, and just stood in the dark, my heart pounding so hard I could hear the blood in my ears. Knock, knock, knock. I jumped, stifling a scream with the back of my hand. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Knock, knock, knock. Slowly, I crept to the door. My peephole was cracked and yellowed, distorting the hallway into a funhouse mirror. There was a man standing there. I couldn't see his face. He wore a generic baseball cap pulled down low. He wasn't looking at my door. He was looking down. He bent over, placed a thick manila envelope on my worn-out welcome mat, and turned. He just walked away. He didn't run. He just walked to the stairs and disappeared. I waited 5 full minutes, my back pressed against the wall, before I dared to undo the locks. I snatched the envelope, locked the door, and threw all 3 bolts. It wasn't sealed. I dumped the contents onto my cot. It was one single document. It looked official, very official. There was a faint seal at the bottom, an eagle clutching what looked like a stock ticker. Bureau of Economic Integrity, Port Garrison Field Office. It was a pre-signed legal document. It had my name on it, Naya Delgado. It was, from what I could tell, a conditional immunity waiver. It said that in exchange for testimony regarding financial irregularities at the Black Harbor Steakhouse, I would be granted full transactional immunity from any subsequent investigation. There was no signature line for me, just a faint, scribbled signature at the bottom from a deputy director I'd never heard of. I dropped the paper as if it were on fire. Kira Palace, the Urban Integrity Commission, the Bureau of Economic Integrity. And Elias Calderon, Harbor Logistics, the job offer. I understood. This wasn't just a job offer, it was a war. Calderon wasn't just hiring a cashier, he was recruiting a witness. And Kira Palace wasn't just a nosy PI, she was the other side. I wasn't a waitress, I wasn't a victim, I was a piece on a chessboard. And I was suddenly, terrifyingly aware that 2 different, very powerful hands were moving me, both trying to use my voice, the voice that had told off 3 thugs in a restaurant for their own game. I had no idea which side was more dangerous. I took 3 buses to get to Pier 17. The city woke up in stages around me, from the pre-dawn gray of my neighborhood to the sharp, financial district sunlight glinting off glass towers. Then finally, the bus crossed the industrial canal, and the world changed again. This was the part of Port Garrison you only saw if you worked there. The air was thick with salt, diesel, and the metallic tang of welding. The sky was dominated by the skeletal arms of cargo cranes. Harbor Logistics was exactly where the text said it would be, but it was nothing like the greasy, anonymous office I'd pictured. It was a fortress. It wasn't a building so much as a 3-story bunker of smoked glass and reinforced steel. Hunkered down at the end of the pier, it looked like it was designed to withstand a hurricane, or maybe a siege. There wasn't a single angle of the perimeter that wasn't covered by a sleek, black security camera, the kind that swivels with a silent, 360-degree menace. The entrance wasn't a door, it was an airlock. I had to buzz in and hold my cracked ID up to a camera. A disembodied voice told me to proceed to the scanner. I had to put my backpack and my thin coat on a conveyor belt, just like at the airport, and walk through a metal detector. The whole time, a bored-looking guard in a crisp black uniform watched me from behind bulletproof glass. I was Naya Delgado, a waitress. With 3 copies of a business card hidden in my apartment and my shoe, I felt like I was trying to infiltrate a military base with a plastic knife. The guard buzzed me through the second door, and the sound of the docks died instantly. The lobby was all polished concrete and dark wood. It was silent, dead silent. A woman with a severe black bob and a tablet was waiting for me. "Miss Delgado, Mr. Calderon is expecting you." She led me to an elevator that didn't have buttons, just a key card scanner. She tapped her own card, and we ascended, still in total silence. Elias Calderon's office was on the top floor. It was a corner office, but it was the opposite of opulent. There were no paintings, no trophies, just a massive, clean desk made of a single piece of dark wood, a wall of smoked glass windows looking over the entire port, and 2 chairs. One was a high-backed leather throne behind the desk. The other was a simpler, but still expensive, upholstered guest chair. Elias Calderon was standing by the window, his back to me, wearing that same perfectly tailored black coat I'd seen in the restaurant. He was just watching the yard, watching the trucks and cranes move containers like they were toy blocks. "Miss Delgado, thank you for coming," he said, turning. His voice was the same as I remembered, quiet, deep, and carrying absolute authority. "Please sit." He didn't motion to the simple guest chair. He walked around his desk and pulled out the other one, the one next to his, angled slightly toward the window. The chair he clearly used when he was reading, not when he was holding meetings. He was giving me the better seat. It was a small thing, but it was so strange it threw me off balance. Trent would have made me stand. Henderson would have made me perch on a wobbly stool. Elias Calderon offered me a place of comfort. He sat in the simpler guest chair himself, leaving his desk, his throne empty. He didn't tower over me. He met me at eye level. "The offer you received," he began, steepling his fingers. "It was not for a cashier." I felt my heart clench. It said records administrator. It is, but the title is a cover. I have an internal leak. Miss Delgado, a discrepancy in my manifests. Someone is moving product through my docs without my authorization, using my own system to do it. The contract you have is for 2 weeks of independent inventory verification. You would report only to me. "Why me?" I asked, my voice coming out stronger than I expected. "I'm a waitress. You have 100 accountants." "Because you are a waitress," he said, his eyes locking on mine. "You have no loyalty to my staff. You have no history here. You don't know the right way to do things. So you won't know when you're being lied to. You're an outsider." And, he added, a flicker of something was at amusement in his eyes, "You are not easily intimidated. I saw that for myself. I need eyes that will tell me what they see, not what they are told to see." He was handing me the answer to the puzzle. I wasn't just a witness for Kira Palace's bureau. I was Elias's secret weapon against his own organization. He was using me. Yes, but he was also trusting me. And I saw my opening. The power in this room wasn't all his. He needed me. "I have conditions," I said. He just nodded. "Go on." "I only work daylight hours, 8 to 4. I leave this pier before the sun goes down." "Acceptable." "I don't get involved with anything." I looked him straight in the eye. "I'm checking numbers on a screen and pallets in a warehouse. If it's not on a legal manifest, I don't see it, I don't touch it, I don't know about it. I'm not getting my hands dirty." I expected him to laugh or to get cold. Instead, he stood, walked to his desk, and pulled a single sheet of paper from a drawer. It was a blank addendum. He took a heavy, black pen from his jacket. "State it." "I what?" "Your terms. State them again, I'll write them down." I repeated myself, feeling shaky. Naya Delgado will work 8 to 4, and I will not be required to handle or inventory any non-manifested or illicit goods. He wrote it, his handwriting the same precise, sharp script from the note on my bike. He signed it at the bottom, Elias Calderon. Then he slid the pen and the paper over to me. "Your copy," he said. I signed it. He'd just signed a legal document, written by me, admitting he had illicit goods to begin with. He was either incredibly bold or incredibly reckless, or he was testing me. "My assistant, Juniper, will get you badged and oriented," he said, his tone shifting back to business. "Your 2 weeks start now." Juniper Lane was the opposite of her boss. She was nervous, bird-like, with flyaway hair and eyes that darted everywhere. She handed me an official ID badge with my picture on it, a picture I didn't remember taking. Then I remembered the camera at the security gate. "This is the Atlas dock system," she said, her voice high and thin, as we stood at a bank of computers. "It's our proprietary logistics software. Every container, every pallet, every box that enters Harbor Logistics is scanned, weighed, and assigned a unique code. The code dictates its path, from the ship to the warehouse to the truck." She gave me a tour. It was a city. We walked through a warehouse so cold it was full of fog, the cold storage where she pointed out pallets of frozen fish from Alaska. We walked past endless aisles of pallets stacked 50 feet high, full of electronics, tires, bags of grain. "Mister, Calderon said to give you full system access," she said, typing in a long password at my new desk. "This is your terminal? You can cross-reference any manifest from the last 6 months." I sat down. The system was complex, but the logic was simple: inbound, storage, outbound. Like orders in a kitchen, you don't send out the steak before the appetizer. You don't store the ice cream next to the hot lamps. I started where Elias said the problem was: discrepancies. It took me 3 hours. 3 hours of staring at columns of numbers and codes, and then I found it. A code Mauve Delta. It was listed as medical and charitable supplies, Port Garrison Outreach, a non-profit. But the weight was wrong. The weight logged at the ship-to-shore scanner was 10% higher than the weight logged at the warehouse entry. Every time. And then I saw the override. A supervisor-level code had been used to correct the weight after the fact. The original log, the heavier one, was being buried. Someone was using a charity's name to move something heavy and covering their tracks by manipulating the digital log after the cargo was already inside. "I'm going to check the pier," I told Juniper, trying to sound casual. "Oh, you don't have to," she said quickly. "It's all in the system." "I like to see the process," I said, grabbing my new badge. The docks were a different world, loud, chaotic, and bracing. The wind whipped my hair across my face, and the air was alive with the roar of trucks, the shriek of cranes, and the shouts of men in hard hats. I was walking along Pier 17A, watching a massive container ship from Panama being unloaded, when I saw him. It was one of the Greys from the restaurant, the one who had laughed when the milk spilled. He was standing by a forklift, holding a clipboard. He saw me. His eyes went wide. He froze. A deer in the headlights. I froze, too. My first instinct was to run. But then, Elias Calderon's office door opened somewhere in the back of my mind. The man looked at me, then at my badge. He saw the Harbor Logistics logo. Then he did the strangest thing. He broke eye contact, dipped his head in a short, jerky bow, and turned, walking quickly away from me. A new rule had been established. I wasn't the waitress anymore. I was something else, something to be avoided. I kept walking, my heart pounding a new rhythm. I was so focused on the gray-suited man that I didn't hear the overhead gantry crane moving, its warning beep lost in the wind. I stepped back from the edge of the pier, right into the path of a swinging pallet of steel pipes. A hand clamped on my upper back, warm and strong, and pulled me. I stumbled back, landing hard against a solid chest. The pallet swung by, inches from my face, the wind of its passing making me gasp. I looked up. It was Elias. He'd come out of the office and was walking the pier, his black coat flapping in the wind. His hand was still on my back, steadying me. The touch was impersonal, just a point of contact to stop me from falling into the bay. But it was also not. It was heavy, protective. And the fact that my body registered the warmth of his palm through my jacket and shirt was dangerous. "You need to watch the high lines," he said, his voice calm. He didn't seem fazed at all. "Thank you," I breathed. Stepping away, the heat from his hand lingered on my back. "Come," he said. "It's noon. We'll eat." We did not mean his private office. We meant the workers' cafeteria, a loud, brightly lit room that smelled of fried fish and strong coffee. He grabbed a plastic tray, got in line with the longshoremen and the truck drivers, and paid for a plate of fish and chips and a black coffee. I did the same, my hands shaking as I paid for my own. He sat at a long laminate table surrounded by his men, and they weren't his men like the Grays. They were his employees. They nodded to him. Boss, Mr. Calderon. They talked about the weather, about a bad shipment of tires. He sat there, in his perfect coat, eating terrible cafeteria food, and he just listened. His power wasn't in shouting. Like Trent, it was in his quiet. He didn't have to perform. He just was... An alarm went off on a small tablet he had on the table. A high-pitched, insistent beep. He looked at it. Container 44B, cold storage, temperature warning. Juniper, who had joined us, looked pale. I'll call maintenance. It's probably a faulty sensor. I can check it, I said, surprising myself. I just saw the cold storage block. Elias looked at me. He just appraised me for a second, then he nodded. Go. I ran. Back to the cold warehouse. Container 44B was a refrigerated unit, a reefer plugged into the dock's power. The digital readout on its side was flashing red, warning 4C, set, 18C. 4 degrees. That was about 39 degrees Fahrenheit. The set point was -18. That was near zero. Whatever was inside was thawing. I unlatched the heavy door and pulled it open. A blast of cool, damp air hit me. It wasn't full of fish. It was full of boxes marked Belgian chocolates. High-end stuff, melting. But the reefer unit itself was humming. The air inside was cold. I checked the external digital sensor, the one that fed to Elias's tablet. It was warm to the touch. Then I looked behind the sensor. Someone had wedged a disposable chemical hand warmer packet between the sensor and the container wall. It was deliberately faked. Someone wanted the system to think the container was failing. They wanted someone to open it. What is it? Juniper had run up behind me, breathless. The sensor was faked, I said. I pulled the hand warmer out with a pen and dropped it in an evidence bag, something I didn't even know I had until I'd grabbed it from a first aid kit on the wall. Juniper looked like she was going to be sick. But who? There's someone in dispatch who hates being corrected by the new girl, I muttered, thinking of the Mauve Delta file. This was a test, or a trap. Back at my desk, I felt a new sense of urgency. I sent a message on the internal chat system to the network accounting department. I needed the server logs for the Atlas Dock terminal. A new name popped up, Orrin Lyle. On it, an hour later, a file appeared on my desktop. It was the full access log. I cross-referenced the timestamp of the Mauve Delta weight correction. 3:03 in the morning. A user named D. Pike had logged in, accessed the manifest, and rewritten the weight data. I asked Orrin Lyle who D. Pike was. The answer came back instantly. Daryl Pike. He's the shift supervisor for port security, the night shift. The security, the people guarding the guards. My shift ended at 4. I left on the dot. I walked out of the steel and glass bunker, back into the real world, my head swimming with codes, alarms, and a signature. D. Pike. I was walking the half-mile to the bus stop, my pace quick, the sun already dipping behind the giant cranes. The street was deserted. A black sedan pulled up slowly beside me, pacing me. My blood turned to ice. It was the same sedan from the alley. I started to run. A second car, this one a beat-up blue Honda, suddenly cut me off, screeching to a halt at the curb in front of me. I was trapped, boxed in between the two cars. The passenger door of the Honda flew open. Get in now! It was Kira Pallas, the PI from the bar. Her face was grim, her eyes frantic. What are you... Get in, Naya, damn it, move. She didn't wait. She leaned across the seat, grabbed the front of my jacket, and physically yanked me into the car. She slammed the door shut as the driver peeled out, the tires smoking. The black sedan behind us gunned its engine, its headlights flashing in the rearview mirror. What is going on? I yelled, fumbling for a seatbelt. Kira didn't look at me. She was watching the sedan in her side mirror as it swerved to follow us. "You're an idiot, kid," she spat, her voice a low, terrified growl. "You've been in that building for less than 8 hours." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the micro tag on your backpack. Someone's tagged you. They know exactly where you are. And now, they know you're with me." Kira didn't drive. She flew. The Honda was a cheap, rattling machine, but she handled it like a weapon, taking a hard right that sent me slamming against the passenger door. "The tag," I yelled, yanking my backpack from the floor. "Where is it?" "Don't bother. You won't find it," she snapped, wrenching the wheel left, then right again, diving into the labyrinth of the dockside access roads. The black sedan, the same sedan from the alley, was right on our tail, its engine a low growl that I could feel even over our own. It's a micro tag, sewn into the lining. Probably. They're military grade. He's had you marked since you walked in this morning. You mean Elias? "No, idiot," she barked, checking her rearview mirror. "Calderon doesn't need to tag you. He knows where you are. This is the opposition, the people he's hiding you from. The people who faked that reefer alarm." She slammed on the brakes, did a 180 in a gravel lot, and sped back the way we came, playing chicken with a massive container truck. The truck blared its horn, a sound loud enough to shake the car, forcing the black sedan to swerve and fall back. Kira used the opening, shooting down a narrow alley between two towering warehouses. She flicked her headlights off, plunging us into near total darkness. She cut the engine. We sat there, breathing hard in the sudden, echoing silence. The alley smelled of rust and dead fish. Rain drumped on the roof. "Who?" I finally managed to ask, my voice a whisper. "Who is this?" Kira didn't answer. She pulled a tablet from the glove box. She tapped the screen, and a map of Port Garrison lit up. It was covered in pulsing red dots, concentrated heavily around the piers, but also scattered through the city. "This," she said, tapping one of the dots, "is Mauve Delta. The charity shipment you found, it's not just moving heavy, it's moving product for Pavel Dracos." The name meant nothing to me. "Dracos," she continued, her voice low and tense, "is Elias Calderon's shadow. For every move Elias makes in the light, Dracos makes 2 in the dark. Elias controls the logistics. Dracos controls the contraband. They've had a tense arrangement for years, but Dracos is getting greedy. He's using Calderon's own system, your Atlas dock, to move his merchandise, passing it off as charity. You, Naya, just stumbled into the middle of their war." She put the tablet away. "Elias thinks he's using you to clean his house. Dracos thinks you're Elias's new accountant, and I think you're in over your head." "So what do you want?" I asked, my fingers digging into the cheap upholstery. That thing you gave me, the Bureau of Economic Integrity? That was a test. This is the real deal." She turned to face me, her sharp eyes seeming to pin me to the seat. "I work for the Federal Commerce Wardens, the FCW. We're not local. We're not impressed by Elias Calderon or Pavel Dracos. We're here to shut them both down, the whole corrupt port." "And you want me to what, be a spy?" I laughed, a short, hysterical sound. "I'm a waitress, I was. Anyway, I'm not this." "I don't want you to be a spy," Kira said, her voice softening just a fraction. "I want you to be a witness. I want you to go back in there. Keep doing what you're doing, and you report everything to me. Mauve Delta, Daryl Pike, every code, every pallet. You give me the hard data, and I give you a new life." "A new life?" "We pull you out, full protective custody, a new name, a new city, and the scholarship. You wanted to go back to school. Right Supply Chain Management will put you through the best program in the country. Full ride. All you have to do is help me put these guys away." The offer hung in the air, smelling like a trap, a clean trap, but a trap nonetheless. It was everything I wanted. It was also impossible. "Why me?" I whispered. "You have agents, you have spies." Kira looked out the rain-streaked windshield. "Because my agents can't get inside. Calderon's system is locked tight. He just opened the front door for you. And besides," she looked back at me, You're the one who stood up. In the restaurant, I told you I saw the video. You didn't just stand up to 3 thugs. You stood up to the Calder syndicate with half a dozen cell phones recording, and you didn't flinch. You're brave enough, or maybe just stubborn enough, to say no to men with guns. That's a quality I can't train. Before I could answer, my burner phone, the cheap one I used for everything, vibrated in my pocket. A blocked number. My blood ran cold. I'd given this number to my mother, to my landlord, and I'd used it to text Elias. I opened the message. It was a photograph. My stomach dropped. It was my apartment, my pathetic, peeling wallpaper, single-cot studio. It was taken from the window, looking in. No, not from the window. It was taken from the roof of the building across the street, with a zoom lens. I could see my copy of the business card on the nightstand. It was a clear, cold message. We know where you sleep. I showed the phone to Kira. She let out a string of curses that would have made a longshoreman blush. Dracos. It has to be. He's not just watching the pier. He's had a team on you since the restaurant. He knows Elias is interested in you. So he's interested in you. She started the car. Okay, new plan. You're not going home. Not tonight. Not for a while. She drove us out of the industrial zone, merging with the civilian traffic. She took us to a place I'd only ever seen from the bus, the Garrison Hotel. It was an older building, the kind that pretended to be classy but was really just anonymous. Beige carpets, bad art, and heavy doors. Kira paid in cash for a room on the 3rd floor, using an ID that said her name was Jennifer Smith. "This is temporary," she said, checking the room before letting me in. She checked the closet, the bathroom, behind the curtains. A neutral location. Don't call your mom. Don't call anyone. Don't use the hotel Wi-Fi. Just sit tight. I'm going to make some calls. Find us a real safe house. I'll be back in an hour. She left. I heard the deadbolt click. I was alone. I stood in the middle of the room, my backpack still on, the micro tag still sewn inside it. I was a target. I had a picture of my own bedroom, taken by a predator. I had a job offer from one crime boss and a protection offer from a federal agent who both wanted to use me. I walked to the window and looked down at the rainy street 3 floors below. I felt utterly, completely alone. I was 23 years old, just 23. I must have stood there for the full hour. I don't know. The next thing I knew, there was a knock at the door. Knock, knock, knock. My heart stopped. Kira had a key. She wouldn't knock. I backed away from the door, grabbing the heaviest thing I could find, the Gideon's Bible from the nightstand. Knock, 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 louder this time. I crept to the peephole. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold the Bible. There was a man standing there. He was holding a black umbrella, dripping rainwater onto the beige carpet. He wasn't wearing a gray suit or a baseball cap. He was wearing his perfectly tailored black coat, no bodyguards, no muscle. It was Elias Calderon. How did he know I was here? The door handle jiggled. He wasn't just knocking, he was testing the lock. Then I heard another sound from the hallway, a sharp click. Calderon? It was Kira's voice, hard as steel. She was back. Step away from the door. Palace. Elias's voice replied. It was calm. Unbothered. He'd known she was there. You're getting slow. What do you want? The same thing you do. I'm here to make sure she sleeps soundly tonight. I fumbled with the locks, my hands shaking. I pulled the door open a few inches, held by the chain. They were standing in the hallway, a perfect tableau of my impossible situation. Kira was in a low, defensive stance, her hand on the taser clipped to her belt. Elias just stood there, umbrella in hand, looking completely relaxed. They knew each other. This wasn't a first meeting. People are getting sloppy, Elias said, his eyes finding mine through the crack in the door. Pavel Dracos's people have shown their hand. That photograph was clumsy. It was meant to panic you. And you showing up here isn't, Kira shot back. I'm not the one who put a tracker in her bag. Pavel. My blood stopped. He called Kira Pavel. No, that wasn't right. He was looking past Kira. A third person. A man stepped out of the stairwell, the one Kira had just come up. He was wearing a hotel maintenance uniform. It was the man from the dock, the one in the gray suit, the one who had bowed to me. He had a gun. Kira had been so focused on Elias. She'd been flanked. "Drop the taser, Palace," the man said. Elias sighed, as if he were bored. "That's not going to happen." Before the man could react, Elias moved. He didn't attack. He just opened his umbrella, a fast, violent thwack of wet canvas snapping open, right in the man's face. The man flinched, blinded. That's all Kira needed. She moved, a blur of motion. She kicked the gun from his hand, and the zap of her taser filled the air, followed by a grunt as the man convulsed and dropped. It took maybe 3 seconds. Elias calmly closed his umbrella. He kicked the gun, sending it sliding down the hall. "As I was saying," Elias said, turning back to me, "I'm here to ensure her safety." Kira was breathing hard, clipping her taser back to her belt. She looked at Elias with pure hatred. "You knew he was there. You used yourself as bait." "He was Dracos's man, not mine. He's been tailing you since you picked her up." Elias looked at me. "May I come in?" I undid the chain. He stepped inside, his presence filling the small, cheap room. Kira followed, locking the door behind him. "This hotel is burned," Kira said, checking the man in the hall before closing the door. "It was burned the moment you paid in cash," Elias said. He looked at me. "Are you all right?" I was still holding the Bible. I dropped it on the bed. "You," I said, my voice shaking with a new kind of anger. "You fired Trent Barlow." He turned, surprised by the question. "No, I did not. But the notice—" "I made one phone call," Elias said, his voice quiet, "to the man who owns the building the Black Harbor leases, a man who owes me a favor. I told him his tenant. Trent Barlow was a liability. The owner then called his corporate office. They discovered Trent's violations. I merely removed the stone that was holding him up. The rest, as you said, the restaurant handled itself." It was a terrifying explanation, a display of invisible power. "Don't turn this kid into a shield, Calderon," Kira warned, her voice low. Elias looked at her. "A shield? I'm trying to find a leak. You're trying to start a war. Don't lecture me, Palace. I'm making the city a little cleaner. You're just trying to burn it down." "It needs to burn down," she retorted. Elias ignored her and walked toward the door. He stopped, his hand on the knob. "He'll send more. Dracos is not subtle." He looked at me. "The work at the pier is still waiting." He left. As he turned to walk down the hall, stepping over the still groaning maintenance man, his coat sleeve pulled up, just for a second. I saw a scar, a long, jagged white line that ran from his wrist up under his shirt sleeve. It wasn't a knife wound. It looked like an old, vicious burn. After he was gone, Kira let out a breath. "You see that?" she whispered, nodding toward the hallway. "The scar." I nodded. "He got that dragging his little sister out of a fire. Years ago. She didn't make it. People like him, the ones who believe in their promises, they're the most dangerous of all." A new kind of fear settled on me. It was maybe 3 a.m. I was dozing in the hotel chair, my backpack with the tracker now in the bathtub, wrapped in a wet towel. Kira was asleep on the bed, fully dressed. Whoop, whoop, whoop! The fire alarm. It was so loud it felt like a drill in my skull. "Go, go!" Kira yelled, grabbing her bag. "Go bag, let's move!" We ran into the hallway. It was already filling with smoke. Not thick, black smoke, but thin, chemical smoke. The other doors were opening, people in pajamas stumbling out, confused. "Stairs!" Kira yelled, pulling me toward the emergency exit. She slammed her shoulder into the push bar. The door didn't budge. "It's locked!" she yelled, throwing her full weight against it. "It's chained! Someone chained it from the other side!" People started to scream. The smoke was getting thicker. "This way!" A voice cut through the panic. It was Elias. He was standing at the end of the hall, by the other stairwell. How had he known he hadn't left? He was waiting. He didn't wait for us. He shoulder-checked the stairwell door, and the lock splintered. He wasn't breaking in, he was breaking out. He grabbed my arm as I ran past, not my wrist, my upper arm, and pulled me into the stairwell. Down, all the way down, don't stop. We clattered down the concrete stairs, past the lobby, which was already full of smoke. He didn't take us to the street. He pushed open the door to the sub-basement. The alarm was fainter here. We burst into a dark, damp hallway that smelled of garbage and concrete. The emergency lights cast a sickly green glow. It was the trash compactor room. He slammed the door shut, plunging us into near total darkness, cutting off the alarms. The only sound was us, breathing. He was right in front of me. I couldn't see his face, only his silhouette against the green exit sign. We were 2 feet apart, maybe 3. Both of us breathing hard from the run. The air was thick with the smell of wet trash in his coat, which smelled like rain and ozone. His eyes found mine in the gloom. He didn't say, "Are you okay?" He just looked. He saw the panic, the fear, the exhaustion. I could feel the heat rolling off him from the exertion. And I saw it, the moment. The one where he could have stepped closer. The one where he could have said something. Reached out. He didn't. He took a small, deliberate step back. He broke the eye contact first, turning his head to listen at the door. My phone buzzed. It was Kira, not a text, a call. I answered, my hand shaking. "Naya, I lost you in the smoke. I'm on the street. It wasn't a fire. It was a setup. Smoke grenades in the air ducts. The hotel is compromised. We're burned." I looked at Elias, his back still to me, a dark, solid shape in the green light. "Change position," Kira's voice snapped in my ear. "All business. Meet me at the corner of 4th and Grant. Tonight, you come to my safe house." I didn't watch him go. After he stepped back into the shadows of that hotel basement, I ran. My lungs burned, tasting of chemical smoke in the cold, wet air. I ran until my legs were numb, until I saw the dim headlights of Kira's beat-up Honda at the corner of 4th and Grant. I ripped the passenger door open and fell into the seat. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just hit the gas. We drove for what felt like an hour, winding up into the hills that overlooked the harbor, leaving the city grid behind. The streets here were narrow, slick with pine needles and mist. She pulled down a long, unpaved gravel road that seemed to end at the edge of a cliff. She killed the engine. "This is it," she said. It wasn't a house. It was an old boathouse, and on top of it, a small attic apartment built of weathered wood. It looked like it had been here for 100 years. We got out. The only sounds were the wind whistling through the tall pines and the distant, lonely clang of a channel buoy out in the dark. Kira unlocked 3 different, heavy-duty locks, and we stepped inside. The air was cold and smelled of cedar, old rope and salt. It was one big room, with a sloped ceiling, a small cot, an old sofa, and a massive picture window that looked out over the entire bay. The water at night wasn't black. It was a vast, flat sheet of polished steel, reflecting the cold pinpricks of light from the far side of the harbor. I had never seen the ocean look so quiet. Kira dropped her go-bag by the door and slumped into a worn-out armchair. The adrenaline was leaving her, and for the first time, she just looked tired. "He won't find us here," she muttered, rubbing her eyes. "This place is off the grid, belongs to an old federal judge. Dracos's men won't even think to look." My entire body was one big, vibrating nerve. My palms were raw and bloody from where I'd fallen on the concrete stairs during the escape. I found a small first aid kit in the bathroom, my hands shaking so badly I could barely open the antiseptic wipe. Kira was already asleep in the chair, her head lolled back, her breathing a low, rough snore. She was out cold. I sat on the floor, cleaning the gravel out of my skin, wincing. This was my life now, running from smoke grenades in the middle of the night, hiding in a secret attic. A small, heavy object on the kitchenette counter caught my eye. It was a brand new burner phone, still in its plastic. A note from Kira was next to it. Clean, encrypted. "My number is 1. Use it for nothing else." I picked it up. There was a text message. It had come in 10 minutes ago. It wasn't from speed dial 1. It was from an unknown number. I opened it. Pier 17 is locked down. Dracos' man from the hotel is being handled. Rest. It wasn't signed. It didn't have to be. My fingers hovered over the screen. How did he get this number? Did Kira give it to him? I sat there, the antiseptic wipe forgotten in my hand, watching the distant, blinking light of the buoy. I hadn't taken a full, deep breath in 2 days. I didn't sleep. I just watched the sky change. The steel-gray water turned to lavender, then to a pale, cold pink dawn. I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel road below. Kira was awake instantly, a low growl in her throat. She was on her feet, her hand on the taser on her belt, moving to the window. She looked down, and her whole body went rigid with fury. "You've got to be kidding me!" I looked over her shoulder. Down on the little patch of gravel by the water, an old, unremarkable gray pickup truck was parked. Elias Calderon got out. He wasn't wearing his black coat, just dark jeans and a heavy, dark gray sweater. He was holding a large paper bag and a cardboard tray with 2 coffees. He didn't walk to the door, and he didn't look up at the window. He just walked to the edge of the wooden dock, set the bag and the coffees on a piling, and stood there, looking out at the water. He was waiting. He knew we were watching. "How did he find this place?" I whispered. "He didn't," Kira spat, her voice tight with anger. "I gave him the number. As a one-time emergency line, I didn't think he'd use it for a social call." She stormed down the narrow wooden stairs. I heard her voice, sharp and low, and his, a calm, deep rumble. A minute later, she came back up, her face a mask of frustration. "He's asking for you," she said, clipping her words. "He says he brought breakfast, your call, Naya, but remember what he is. This isn't your friend." I walked down the stairs. The morning air was sharp and cold, stinging my lungs. He was still standing on the dock, his back to me. "You're okay," I said. It came out as a statement, not a question. "You got out of the hotel." He turned. His face was tired. He hadn't slept either. "I know the service tunnels," he said simply. He gestured to the bag on the piling. "The diner on Route 7. They make waffles. They're still warm." "You shouldn't be here," I said, my voice thin. "Kira's right. It's dangerous." "It's more dangerous for you to be alone." He picked up the coffee tray and held one out. Black. I remembered from the cafeteria. I took it. Our fingers brushed. His skin was warm, despite the cold. I stepped back, holding the door open. "You should come in. It's cold out here." He followed me up the creaking stairs into the attic. Kira was at the tiny table, pointedly disassembling and cleaning her taser. Ignoring him completely, the tension in the small room was so thick I could barely breathe. Elias set the bag on the counter. The smell of hot waffles and maple syrup filled the room. A scent so normal, so domestic, it felt like a violation. He didn't sit. He walked to the big window, and I stood near him. The table's length of distance Kira had imposed still between us. "This place," he said, looking out at the cranes just visible in the distance. "It smells like machine oil and low tide." "It smells like home," I said, surprising myself. "A little. I'm from Texas. My father worked on shrimp boats. He always smelled like diesel and salt." Elias turned to look at me, his gaze analytical. "You're not from Port Garrison." "No, I came here to get away. Start over." He nodded, sipping his coffee. "I had a sister," he said, his voice flat, matter of fact, as if commenting on the weather. "Leia. She loved the water. She disappeared a long time ago." He said it so simply, but the words landed like stones. Kira's words from the hotel hallway. He got the dragging his little sister out of a fire. He was telling me a piece of his truth. The hot coffee was warming my hands. The adrenaline from the night was finally gone, replaced by a bone-deep, crushing exhaustion. "I know about starting over," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I looked down at my coffee. "Before, at the restaurant, Trent, the manager, the one I didn't fire," he corrected, his eyes on the water. He used to make me work doubles. He knew I needed the money. One night, I missed the last bus. It was almost 2 a.m. He'd already locked the front doors, and we said I could sleep in the dry storage pantry or walk home. It was raining. I hadn't meant to say it. The shame of it. I slept on a stack of flour bags because I couldn't afford a cab. The silence that followed was absolute. I heard Kira stop her movements. I looked up at Elias. He hadn't moved a muscle. He was still staring out the window, but his hand, the one holding his paper coffee cup, was clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. The cup was starting to crumple. A small, dark trickle of coffee leaking from the seam. He just stood there. His jaw was set so hard I could see the muscle jump. A sudden, violent gust of wind slammed into the boathouse. The entire attic shuddered, and the big window rattled in its frame, a sound like chattering teeth. The cold of the glass seemed to radiate inward. I shivered, a full body, uncontrollable tremor. It wasn't just the cold. It was the memory, the fear, the exhaustion. Elias finally moved. He set the crushed, leaking cup down on the counter. He didn't say a word. He walked to the cot, where a thick, dark wool blanket was folded. He picked it up and walked back to me. He didn't toss it at me. He stepped close, into my space, and draped it over my shoulders. As he did, his fingertips brushed the side of my neck, just below my ear. It wasn't an accident, it was deliberate, a fleeting, questioning touch. It lasted maybe 2 seconds, but my entire skin flared as if he'd held a match to it. Warmth spread from that one tiny point of contact, chasing the cold away. I looked up at him. He was closer than he had ever been. The space between us was gone. I could see the lines of exhaustion around his dark eyes. He wasn't the boss. He wasn't the monster. He was just Elias, and he was watching me, his gaze intense. This was the moment, the one he'd stepped away from in the hotel basement. This time, he didn't step back. This was the allowed moment. He tilted his head, just a fraction. It was a silent question. May I? I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just waited. He leaned in. He moved so slowly, giving me every possible second to turn my head, to step away, to say no. I didn't. His lips touched mine. It wasn't a kiss of passion. It was a kiss of confirmation. It was slow and soft and breathtakingly gentle. It was a question. His hand, the one that had crushed the cup, came up, but he didn't grab me. He just placed his palm flat on my shoulder, his thumb resting against my collarbone. It was a gesture of steadying, of anchoring. I let out the breath I'd been holding, a small, shaky sigh. The sound of it made the kiss deepen, just a fraction. It was a promise and a question, all at once. My own hand, the one not holding the coffee, came up. I placed it on his chest. I could feel his heartbeat through the thick wool of his sweater. It was slow, steady, calm. I made the next choice. I leaned into him, just a half step, rising on my toes. It was all it took. He hesitated, a split-second pause, a tightening in his jaw. His eyes, still open, asked again, "Are you sure?" I answered by letting my coffee cup slip from my fingers. It hit the wooden floor with a dull thud. My hand was free. I moved it from his chest to the back of his neck, my fingers tangling in his hair. I nodded, once. That was all he needed. His other arm came around my waist, pulling me close, not crushing me, holding me. He gathered me in, flush against him, and his mouth met mine again, and this time, there was no question. It was a long, deep, searching kiss that spoke of hotel fires and lonely nights and sleeping on flour bags. It was breathless and achingly controlled, but it was the most intense thing I had ever felt. It wasn't a spark. It was an anchor line pulling taut. He was steadying me, and I was steadying him. He broke the kiss, but he didn't let me go. He just rested his forehead against mine. We stood like that for a full minute, breathing the same air, sharing the same space. He smelled like coffee in the cold morning wind. He took my hand, led me to the old, overstuffed sofa against the wall, and sat, pulling me down with him. He reached for the blanket I'd dropped and wrapped it around us both. We just sat, side by side, tangled in a wool blanket, listening to the wind and the distant buoy. It wasn't about more. It was about this quiet, this warmth. I felt the last of the tension drain out of me, and my head grew heavy. I leaned it against his shoulder, then let it slide down until my forehead was resting on his collarbone, right over his heart. His arm tightened around me, holding me securely. We sat in silence for a long time, then he spoke, his voice a low rumble in his chest, right against my ear. "I don't promise peace, Naya." I waited. "I only promise honesty." I must have fallen asleep, my ear pressed to his chest, listening to the honest, steady rhythm of his heart. The next thing I knew, the light in the room had changed. The sun was fully up, streaming in golden bars through the window. "All right," a dry voice said from the doorway. I jolted, sitting up. Kira was standing there, a fresh mug of coffee in her hand. She wasn't looking at us. She was looking at the empty waffle bag on the table, my spilled coffee cup on the floor, and the wool blanket that was now pooled around our feet. She raised a single, cynical eyebrow. "I'm glad everyone's rested." Elias and I moved apart, not guiltily, but like two soldiers returning to reality. He stood up, running a hand through his hair. "Palace," he said, and just like that, the boss was back. "She can't stay here," Kira said, "all business. Dracos will tear this city apart looking for her now that he's lost her." "And she can't go back to the pier," Elias countered. "Not alone. He owns the night security chief." "So what's the plan?" Calderon, Kira challenged, crossing her arms. "You're the one who dragged her into this spotlight, and you," she said, her sharp eyes landing on me, "are the one who decided to trust him." I stood up, pulling the blanket back around my own shoulders. I was the one in the middle. I was the piece on the chessboard, and I was done being moved. "No," I said, My voice was quiet, but they both stopped and looked at me. "You're both right. I can't stay here. I can't go back alone, and I'm not running, so from now on, you don't talk about me. You talk with me." I looked at Kira. "You want Dracos, you want his organization." I looked at Elias. "You want the leak. You want the person in your company who is helping him." They both stared at me. "It's the same person, isn't it? Dracos' man is your leak. We all want the same thing." Kira and Elias looked at each other. It was the first time I'd seen them in agreement on anything. "So, here's the plan," I said, feeling a strange, cold confidence settle over me. "We make a map, a trust map. I'm in the middle. I keep working at the pier. But I'm not your asset," I said to Elias. "And I'm not your witness," I said to Kira. "I'm the partner. We all coordinate. We all share. We set up signals. A code word for when I'm in danger. A code word for when you're being manipulated. No more secrets, no more separate games, or we all lose." Kira stared at me, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across her face. Elias just watched me, that small, almost imperceptible quirk at the corner of his mouth. "All right, partner," Kira said, grabbing a pen and a napkin. "Let's draw the damn map." The next morning, going back to Harbor Logistics was the strangest walk of my life. The air was cold, the same diesel and salt, but I was different. I was still Naya Delgado, independent auditor, but now I was also wearing a wire. Kira had met me at the bus stop, her face all business. "This is a button mic," she'd said, swapping out the third button on my simple white blouse. "The transmitter is flat. It goes in the small of your back, under your waistband. It's got a 4-hour rolling battery, and I'll be in a van 2 blocks away listening to every word. Don't fidget, don't touch it." So, I walked through the steel and glass fortress of Pier 17, feeling like I had a live wasp strapped to my skin. My new partner was waiting for me. Elias didn't greet me at the elevator. He was in the cafeteria, drinking the same bad coffee as yesterday. He just nodded, and the nod said everything. The truce holds. Now get to work. The first thing I did was send a message to Orrin Lyle, the network accountant. I need the full, unredacted logs for Mauve Delta. Not just the weight manifests. I need the origin server, the destination routing, and every access stamp for the last 6 months. The reply was instant, Mr. Calderon already authorized it. It's a big file. Sending now. Orrin Lyle, it turned out, was a patriot. He didn't just send the log, he sent a second private file, a spreadsheet he'd been keeping himself. Been seeing ghosts in the machine for a year. His message read, figured it was time to show someone. I opened his file, and the whole game changed. Mauve Delta, the charity, wasn't just a cover for moving heavy goods. Orrin had tracked the type of product being mislabeled. It was high grade, recycled computer chips, the kind that are supposed to be destroyed but are worth a fortune on the black market. They were being smuggled out of Port Garrison. Not in? And the destination wasn't Port Garrison Outreach. That was just the first stop. The final manifests, the ones buried 4 layers deep, were all routed to a single entity, the Port Renaissance Fund. I'd seen that name before, on billboards, on bus stop benches. They were supposed to be the civic group funding the new harbor expansion. They're not just smuggling, I said to the button on my shirt. They're using a shell company to reinvest the money right back into the city. They're buying the port. Stay on it, Kira's voice whispered in my ear. She'd given me a tiny, flesh-colored earpiece, the kind news anchors wear. That's the definition of racketeering. My hands were flying across the keyboard, pulling up cargo records, when a new tension entered the office. Juniper Lane, Elias's assistant, was hovering by my desk. She looked worse than she had yesterday. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she was twisting a paperclip in her hands. "He wants to see you," she stammered. "Mr. Calderon, in the container yard, Bay C." It was a setup. My stomach went cold. Did he say why? Just to check a manifest, a discrepancy. She couldn't meet my eyes. "I hear her. Naya," Kira's voice buzzed. "Her heart rate's 150. She's terrified. This isn't Elias's order. This is a summons from someone else. Go. I'll watch. Elias is on the pier. I can see him from my van. He's 200 yards away." I stood up, my legs feeling like cement. "Okay, Juniper, lead the way." We walked out of the office, back into the roar and the wind of the docks. Bay C was a canyon of stacked containers, colored blocks of red, blue, and rust orange. It was isolated, shielded from the main office by a wall of steel. "It's this one, ma'am," Juniper said, pointing to a large, refrigerated container. "The manifest, it's wrong." I looked at the container. There was nothing wrong with it. I looked at Juniper. She was shaking like a leaf, her eyes darting up. Not at me, but above me. I heard it before I saw it, the high-pitched hydraulic whine of a forklift running too fast, and then a shout. "Look out, load slipping." I looked up. A massive 10-ton forklift, the kind used to move the containers themselves, was rounding the corner. Its forks were raised, carrying a flat-rack pallet loaded with something, loose pipes. And the driver was Daryl Pike, the night security chief, the man from the logs. He wasn't stopping. He was accelerating. He swerved, as if losing control. The entire flat rack tilted. The pipes, each one thick as my body, were tipping, right at me. There was no time to run. A hand grabbed my waist. It wasn't a pull, it was an impact. I was lifted off my feet and slammed backward, my back hitting the corrugated steel of the container behind me with a clang that knocked the wind out of me. Elias. He was in front of me, his arm a steel bar across my waist, pinning me to the container. He'd come from nowhere. He used his own body as a shield. A ton of steel pipe crashed onto the asphalt, exactly where I had been standing. The sound was a deafening explosion of metal on concrete. The ground shook. Daryl Pike's forklift screeched to a halt. He stared, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. He hadn't just been trying to scare me. He'd been trying to crush me. Elias didn't let go of me. He didn't yell. He just stared at Pike. He slowly raised his left hand and pointed, not at Pike, but at the security camera mounted on the light pole directly above us. A little red light was blinking. The camera was active. It had seen everything. Pike's face went from shock to pure, white-hot panic. He slammed the forklift into reverse and sped away, disappearing around the corner. Elias still didn't move. His arm was still locked around my waist. I was pressed against him, my face buried in his sweater, which still smelled faintly of coffee and wind. I could feel his heart hammering against my chest, or maybe it was mine. I couldn't tell. "You okay?" he murmured, his voice a low vibration against my hair. I just nodded, unable to speak. He let me go, stepping back. I sagged against the container. He tried. "I know." His voice was cold, colder than the harbor wind. A small, choked sound came from behind us. Juniper. She was huddled by the corner, her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She'd seen it all. "He made me," she whimpered, sliding down the wall. "He made me. Dracos. He has my brother. My brother has problems. Gambling. He owes Dracos so much money. They said they'd hurt him. They said I just had to report on Mr. Calderon. And then they said to bring you out here. They said it was just to scare you, I swear to God. I didn't know." Elias walked over to her. He didn't yell. He crouched down, just as he had for me in the office. He put a hand on her shoulder. "Juniper," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Get up. Go to my office. Lock the door. Do not come out until I come for you. Understand?" She nodded, sobbing. "And Juniper, your brother is fine. His debt is being handled. As of right now, you just need to write down everything you know." He was offering her protection. He was buying her testimony. She scrambled to her feet and ran. "Holy hell! Naya!" Kira's voice crackled in my ear. "That was not a warning. That was an execution attempt. We're done. Pull out. Now." "No," I whispered, straightening up, my legs still shaking. "No, Pike is running. He's panicking. Now is when we push." I looked at Elias. "We have to move. Now. Pike's going to wipe his terminal. He's going to run." "He can't," Elias said, a dark confidence in his voice. "Oren just locked his account. He's trapped in the system." "And then let's set the real trap," I said. We went back to the office. This was Kira's idea, the one we'd mapped out at the boathouse, the digital signature trap. With Oren's help, we drafted a fake email. It looked like an urgent internal memo from Harbor Logistics parent company in Rotterdam. Subject: urgent audit, manifest discrepancy, Onyx 9. Body all Level 4 managers must immediately review the attached pallet manifest, Onyx 9, for signature verification. Failure to comply will result in system-wide lockout. It was pure bait. The attached file wasn't a manifest. It was a tracker. A simple, elegant piece of code Kira had designed. The second someone clicked it, it wouldn't just tell us who clicked it. It would fingerprint their entire device, copy their recent keystrokes, and install a listener. "Oren," I said over the chat, "send it to Pike and send it to the entire distribution list for the Port Renaissance Fund." "That's half the city council," Oren typed back. "I know," I said. We waited for 10 minutes. The only sound was the clicking of my keyboard as I pretended to work. Then a ping from Oren's tracker. "We got one," he typed. "Daryl Pike." He clicked it. "He's in... We're reading his machine. Oh, God, he's wiping his hard drive." "Too late," Kira's voice said in my ear. "We've got the cash. We're good." Another ping. My blood ran cold. "Who?" I typed. "I don't believe it," Oren wrote. "The click came from City Hall, from the office of Councilman Robert Miller." My mind flashed back to the bar, to Kira's words. "The Port Garrison Urban Integrity Commission has been trying to get a look inside for a year." "Kira," I whispered into the mic, "which councilman chairs the Integrity Commission?" Kira's reply was a single, hissed curse. "Miller, Robert Miller. The bastard is investigating the port while being on Dracos' payroll. He's not just a leak, he's the faucet." That night, Elias found me as I was clocking out. He was back in his black coat, the boss persona fully restored. "You're not taking the bus," he said. "It wasn't a request. You're coming with me." "Where?" I asked, my hand instinctively going to the button mic, which was now dead. Kira and I had swapped it for a fresh one in the bathroom an hour ago. "The Velvet Anchor. The Port Renaissance Fund is hosting their annual gala. It's a charity event. Councilman Miller will be there. Pavel Dracos will be there. And so will we." "You want me to go to a party after someone just tried to kill me?" "I want to show them I'm not scared," Elias said, his eyes hard. "And I want to show them you're not scared. I'm not introducing you as my secretary. I'm introducing you as my auditing consultant. Look at me. I don't have a dress." He just held up a garment bag. It was a deep midnight blue dress. Simple, elegant, and severe. It wasn't flashy. It was armor. The Velvet Anchor was a different world. It was all dark wood, polished brass, and the low, smooth sound of a live jazz trio. The air smelled like expensive perfume and old money. This was where the real deals were made. Not in boardrooms, but over champagne and shrimp cocktails. I felt like a fraud, but the dress fit perfectly. I'd pulled my hair back into the same severe bun Kira wore. I wore no jewelry. Elias stayed at my side, his hand not touching me but hovering, a point of heat at the small of my back. He introduced me, his voice calm and level. "This is Naya Delgado, my new auditing consultant. She's streamlining my logistics." The word streamlining made Councilman Miller a man with a booming laugh and dead eyes. Pause. He looked at me. A flicker of something recognition. Fear. "A pleasure. Miss Delgado," he said, shaking my hand. His was soft and damp. And then the room temperature dropped. A man was walking toward us. He was wearing a stark white dinner jacket, his hair blonde and swept back. He was smiling, a wide, friendly, political smile. It was Pavel Dracos. He looked nothing like the thug I'd pictured. He looked like a movie star. "Elias," he boomed, spreading his hands. "You came and you brought a guest." He turned his smile on me. It was like having a high-powered spotlight turned on my face. "You must be the famous Miss Delgado," he said, taking my hand. He didn't shake it, he just held it, his thumb brushing my knuckles. "I've heard so much about your resourcefulness. It's a rare quality in this city." My skin crawled. "I'm just good with numbers," I said, pulling my hand back. "I'm sure you are." He was still smiling, but his eyes were ice. He leaned in, as if to tell me a secret. "You know, this is a wonderful party, but it's so easy to get lost. Be careful you don't find yourself on the wrong side of the velvet rope." He gestured to the chair next to me, lightly tapping the armrest with his manicured fingers. "Enjoy the evening." As he did, his white jacket sleeve pulled back, and I saw it. On his wrist, a tattoo. It was a black, stylized image of a seagull, but the seagull's leg was attached to a heavy, broken chain. I didn't react. I just sipped my club soda, but under the cover of the table, I touched my own wrist. Signal. Threat identified. Across the room, disguised as a waitress. Kira Pallas met my eyes for a split second. She nodded, and I saw the glint of a camera lens from the tray she was carrying. "A shackled seagull," Kira's voice whispered in my ear. "That's the mark of the Sea Chain Gang. Mercenaries. They specialize in infiltrating secure facilities. Dracos doesn't just have moles, he has an army." Dracos was still talking to Elias, all smiles and false friendship, but I saw his eyes. They weren't on Elias. They were on me. He was looking at my reflection in the glass of champagne I was holding. He was trying to read my phone, which I'd foolishly placed on the table. He was looking for a number. Before I could move, Elias smoothly set his own glass down, right in front of mine, blocking the reflection. "Pavel," he said, his voice cutting through Dracos' charm. "I believe you were just leaving." Dracos' smile tightened. "Of course. A pleasure, Miss Delgado." He walked away. Elias leaned in, his voice a low murmur. "Give me your phone." "What?" "Your phone, the one from Kira?" I slid it into his hand under the table. He slid one back. It looked identical. A new burner. "That one is clean," he whispered. "He's already compromised the one you have." We didn't stay long. Elias took me home, not to the safe house, but to a new apartment, a corporate efficiency, clean and sterile, that he'd apparently had on standby. "You'll be safe here," he said. "There are 2 guards, my men, in the lobby." We rode up in the elevator. The silence was deafening. After the accident at the pier, the charged energy of the gala, I was exhausted. The elevator doors opened. He walked me to my new door. I turned, the key in my hand. "Thank you for today, at the pier." "We're partners," he said. It wasn't a reassurance. It was a fact. He didn't try to kiss me, he just stood there. And I didn't want him to go. Not yet. So I did the only thing I could. I stepped forward and rested my forehead against his, right there in the beige, brightly lit hallway. He didn't move. He just let out a long, slow breath, and his own forehead pressed back against mine. His hands stayed at his sides. My hands stayed on my keys. It was just a moment of stillness. We weren't the boss and the auditor. We weren't the targets. We were just 2 people, in a hallway, leaning on each other. This was more intimate than the kiss at the boathouse. The kiss was a question. This was an answer. The restraint, the control, the simple, shared pressure, it was a promise. He stepped back first. "Get some rest. Naya, tomorrow, we show them what the audit really looks like." He turned and walked to the elevator, his back straight, his steps silent. I watched him go, the unkissed space between us crackling like a live wire. I woke up in the sterile silence of the corporate apartment, the adrenaline of the gala, the heat of Elias's forehead against mine in the elevator. That silent, powerful promise, it felt like a different lifetime. For the first time in a week, I'd slept. I actually felt safe. That feeling lasted for about 10 minutes. My new phone, the clean one Elias had handed me, buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from Kira. It wasn't words. It was a web link, www, Port Garrison Lighthouse, com, the lighthouse, the only independent news blog in the city. I tapped it. The headline hit me like a bucket of ice water. "Who is the Calderon mystery woman waitress seen in cozy getaway with harbor boss?" My blood stopped. It wasn't a story. It was a video slideshow, a series of grainy, long-lens photographs of me and Elias at Kira's safe house, the boathouse. There was a picture of him getting out of his truck with the waffles. There was one of me at the top of the stairs, letting him in. And then there was the one taken through the big picture window, from the woods, hundreds of yards away. Me and Elias on the sofa, wrapped in that single dark wool blanket. My head was resting on his chest. His arm was around me. It was intimate. It was quiet. And in the context of this headline, it was absolutely damning. My stomach turned over. Kira's safe house, her federal safe house, This wasn't Draco's. Kira's text came in, hard and fast, right after the link. This wasn't a threat. This was a sale. Someone in my organization, or someone in his sold us out, sold you out. My hands were shaking. My name, I texted back. "Is my name in it?" "Not yet," she replied, "but it's coming. The comments are already on fire. Half the Black Harbor staff recognized you." As if summoned, my old burner phone, the one I hadn't touched, lit up on the dresser. A text message. It was from Henderson, the nervous manager from the Black Harbor. "Naya, I'm sorry. We're getting calls from reporters and some very unpleasant people asking about you, about last month. I can't have this kind of trouble. Please don't come back. I'll mail your final check." Just like that, my old life, the fantasy that I could just go back to being a waitress, it was incinerated. I wasn't just unemployed, I was infamous. I was the headline, the harbor boss's woman. The corporate apartment, which had felt like a refuge, now felt like a very clean, very beige prison. My new phone rang. The secure one, it was Elias. His voice was low, rough. I saw it. "Who?" was all I could manage. "It doesn't matter who," he said, his voice flat and cold. "The damage is done. Draco's just made you toxic. He's painting you as a commodity, not a partner." "What do I do?" I whispered. "You stay put. You don't move. You don't answer the door. You don't—" My old phone rang. A live call. I looked at the screen. "Mama?" My heart stopped. "Elias, hold on." I clicked over, my thumb fumbling. "Mama, are you okay? Is the storm?" "Naya Mia?" Her voice was thin, scared. "Who are these people?" "What people? Mama, what's wrong?" I was already on my feet, pacing the small room. A man just called. "Here, at the house." He had an ugly voice. Mija. He knew my name. He said, "You need to stop working for the men at the docks." He said Port Garrison is a dangerous city for visitors. Her voice broke. "Naya, he said he knows I like to garden on Tuesdays." He knew her routine. In Texas, 1,000 miles away. The panic evaporated. It was replaced by something cold, something hard and clear. "Okay, Mama." My voice was dead calm. "Listen to me. Right now, I want you to go to your closet and get your small suitcase. Pack a bag. One bag. Your medicine. Your papers. I'm buying you a plane ticket. Right now, you're coming here." "What, Naya? I can't. The storm. The house." "The storm is in Texas. Mama, the real danger is you staying there. Pack. I'll call you back in 10 minutes with a flight number. I love you." I hung up and clicked back to Elias. He called my mother. In Texas. He threatened her. The silence on his end was absolute. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. The boss was gone. This was the man who'd lost his sister in a fire. "Where?" "Naya." "I'm moving her. Here. To Port Garrison. I need protection. Not for me, for her. She can't be tied to me. She can't be tied to you." "Kira," he said, the single word hanging in the air. "Yes, I'll call Kira. She's federal. She can put my mother in a real safe house. Somewhere clean. Somewhere even your people don't know about." "Done," Elias said. "I'm sending an unmarked car to the airport. It will take her to whatever coordinates Kira provides. Draco's just made this personal. He's about to regret that." The next 2 days were a blur. I was a ghost in a beige apartment, booking flights, coordinating between 2 secret organizations. My mother, terrified and confused, was picked up by Kira's non-Elias, fully federal team, and disappeared. She was safe. I, on the other hand, was not. The fallout from the gala and from the video was immediate. Elias called. "The pier. Now, we have a problem." The car he sent wasn't a town car. It was a black, armored SUV. When I got to Pier 17, the place felt like a war zone. The air was poisonous. A giant, garish X was spray-painted on the main steel door of Warehouse 17. It was a bright, sickly pink. "The sea chain mark," Elias said, his face carved from granite as we stood looking at it. "It's a target, a public declaration. Dracos is telling my men that this warehouse belongs to him now." My stomach churned. "Juniper, where is Juniper?" Elias's jaw tightened. "She never made it home. The men I sent to protect her brother, they found his apartment empty. Both of them gone." "No," I whispered. "And Oren?" I closed my eyes. "Please don't." "He's in the hospital," Elias said, his voice flat. "He was jumped in the parking garage last night, beaten. Not to kill him, but methodically. They broke his hands, both of them. They left him in the trunk of his car with a single, recycled computer chip in his mouth. They broke the accountant's hands, they took the witness, they tagged the building. Dracos was done playing in the shadows. We were in his office, the fortress. The windows were dark. It didn't feel safe. "That's it," Elias said. He was standing with his back to me, looking out at the pink X far below. "It's over." What's over? We just found Miller. We have the leverage." "It's over for you." He turned, and his face was a mask of cold, hard finality. The man from the boathouse was gone. "I'm pulling you out. I have a plane on standby at a private field. It can take you anywhere. Zurich, Buenos Aires. You'll have a new name, a new life. Enough money. You'll be gone by midnight. I just stared at him. You're firing me. I'm saving you. Naya, look at this. He swept his arm at the window, at the chaos Dracos had unleashed. He tried to kill you with a forklift. He threatened your mother. He took Juniper. He broke Oren's hands. What in God's name do you think is next? What do you think he'll do to you? I don't care, I said, my voice shaking but low. I'm not running. Don't be a fool. This isn't a game. This isn't a restaurant shift you can just walk away from. I'm not, I yelled. It was the first time I had ever raised my voice to him. The sound of it shocked us both into silence. I am not running, I said again, my voice trembling with a cold rage. I ran from Texas. I ran from my apartment when the landlord raised the rent. I've been running my whole life, looking for a safe corner. If I run again, if I take your money and hide in Zurich, then I'm not me. I'm just something you bought. I won't do it. Your pride, he said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl, is going to get you killed. And your guilt, I shot back, is going to get you killed. You're not saving me. Elias, you're saving yourself. You're doing what you couldn't do for Leia. He flinched. It was a physical blow. I'd gone too far. He stepped close, invading my space, his face inches from mine. He was radiating cold fury. You don't understand. You're not a partner in this, Naya. You're a target. You are. You're my weakness. The words hung in the air, brutal and honest. My heart felt like it was splitting in two, but I didn't back down. I held his gaze. Then, let me be your strength. The fight seemed to drain out of him, replaced by a deep, weary pain. He closed his eyes, about to speak. Before he could, my new phone buzzed, the clean one, the one only he and Kira had the number for. It was a text from an unknown number. It was just a set of coordinates, a GPS pin dropped in the middle of an industrial wasteland. Glassbone Junkyard, she's here. It's Juniper, I said, showing him the phone. It's a trap. I know, he said. He was already pulling on his black coat. I'm going... No, Kira's voice burst from the phone. She'd been on the line, listening to our entire fight. That's exactly what he wants. Elias, you go in. He takes you, and he wins. The team I sent to those coordinates, it's a trap. I just got the word. They found duct tape and zip ties, but no Juniper. As she spoke, the phone rang. Not a text, a call, from the same unknown number. Elias's face went pale. He put it on speaker. The line was open. There was no hello, just the sound of breathing. Quick, shallow, panicked, a woman trying not to cry. Juniper, I whispered. Then Dracos's voice, smooth as silk. Good evening, Elias. Your girl is distressed, but she's alive, for now. What do you want, Pavel? Elias said, his voice pure ice. What do I want? I want what's mine. The Mauve Delta shipment, the real one, the chips. My buyers are impatient. You've locked down the pier. You've choked my supply line. You're costing me millions. It's not yours, Elias said. It is now. So here's the deal. Your auditor, the strength. My blood ran cold. He had the office bugged. He'd heard our entire fight. For my auditor, you bring me the chips, and you get your little secretary back. You have 1 hour. Glassbone Junkyard. Come alone. He hung up. No, Kira said instantly. It's a lie. He'll take the chips and he'll kill Juniper. He'll kill you both. Elias was pacing, his hands clenched into fists. I don't trade people, Kira, I don't... So you'll just hand him the keys to the city. Those chips are his whole operation. We lose everything. They were stuck. Elias by his code, Kira by her mission. Wait, I said... My voice was quiet. They both stopped and looked at me. The Mauve Delta shipment, the real one. Is it still here? Yes, Elias said. Container 44B, the one you checked, the chocolates. They were just a decoy. The chips are in a false bottom. Then we don't give him the real one, I said. The plan forming, cold and clear. We give him a fake. We load a duplicate container. We fill it with bricks, scrap metal. Anything, but we tag it. Kira's eyes lit up. We put a GPS tracker on the container. We let him steal it. We follow him not just to his hideout, but to his buyer. We can take down his entire network." Elias looked at me, a new, sharp respect in his eyes. "He'll check the shipment. He won't just take a sealed box." "He won't," I said. "That's why I'm going." "No, Naya, absolutely not." "Yes, Elias, he doesn't trust you. He knows you'll bring muscle. He'll be expecting a trap. But me, I'm just the auditor, the weakness. He'll be overconfident. I'll go. I'll make the trade. You just be my backup, from a distance." He looked like he was going to refuse. "You said you'd be honest," I whispered. "Be honest. This is the only way. Trust me." Glassbone Junkyard. It was a mountain range of rust and shattered glass, lit by a few flickering, humming mercury lamps. I drove the truck myself. The duplicate container chained to the flatbed. It was full of scrap metal, and one very powerful, very small federal tracker. Elias was a ghost, a half-mile back, watching through sniper optics. Kira was in her van, coordinating a federal takedown team, 5 miles out, waiting for my signal. I got out of the truck. The wind whistled through a pile of wrecked cars. "You came alone," Dracos' voice. He stepped out from behind a crushed bus. He was in his white suit. It was spotless. I'm impressed. "Where is she?" I said, my voice not shaking. "In a moment. First, my property." He gestured, and 2 of his sea chain thugs, the ones with the seagull tattoos, climbed onto the flatbed. They had crowbars. They pried the door open. They looked inside. "It's scrap, boss." Dracos' smile didn't waver. "Of course it is. Did you really think I wanted the chips? I don't care about the chips, Naya. I care about the leverage." He stepped closer to me. I could smell his expensive cologne. Elias, he cares about these things. He cares about his little secretary. He cares about you. I just wanted you off the board. He reached out, his glove leather-clad fingers aiming for my face. "You don't belong in his shadow, little bird. You could have—" I slapped his hand away. "Where is Juniper?" His smile vanished. "You just made a very big mistake." Suddenly, the world exploded in light, floodlights from every angle blinding me. BI federal agents, hands in the air, hands in the air. Dracos. Men in black tactical gear were swarming the junkyard, their weapons trained on us. Dracos was smiling. He slowly raised his hands. A man in a BEI raid jacket, his face hidden by a helmet and police insignia, walked into the center of the light. He was holding a megaphone. "Pavel Dracos," the man shouted, "you are under arrest." He lifted his face shield. My blood turned to water. It was Daryl Pike, the night security chief, the man who'd tried to kill me with a forklift. Kira's voice screamed in my earpiece. "Naya, get out!" "It's a setup. The BEI it's compromised. Pike is the leak. He's not just working for Dracos. He is the government." Pike looked right at me, a cold, triumphant smile on his face. "Naya Delgado, thank you for bringing us the bait. You're under arrest for attempted bribery of a federal officer." His men weren't aiming at Dracos. They were all aiming at me. This was the part of the movie where the heroes are supposed to be cuffed, heads bowed, the triumphant villain monologuing as the credits roll. Pike was smiling. That greasy, superior smile Trent Barlow used to have, but this one had a federal badge and a gun. He took a step toward me, holding a pair of plastic zip ties. "Naya Delgado," he said, his voice dripping with fake authority. "You are under arrest for the attempted bribery of a federal officer, conspiracy, and—" Dracos, standing by the crushed bus, let out a theatrical sigh. He brushed a piece of dust from his perfect white jacket. "Well, Officer Pike, this is all very official. A shame. Really, a dirty auditor," he tisked. "I'll leave you to your federal business. My men and I will just be on our way." He started to walk toward the gate, casual, like he was leaving a boring party. His sea chain thugs lowered their weapons, ready to follow. This was the plan. Pike arrests me, the problematic witness. Dracos, the helpful citizen, walks away clean. "Kira, I whispered into the mic, my body frozen. They're all aiming at me. Where are you? Hold on, kid, hold. I wasn't going to last that long. Then, a sound. Not the distant sirens, a sound like a screaming animal. A high-pitched, metallic screech of tires on asphalt, coming from the side gate, the one that led to the access road. A black, armored SUV Elias's smashed through the chain-link fence as if it were tissue paper. It wasn't Elias, not at first. It was one of his men, a silent driver I'd seen in the halls, but Elias was in the passenger seat. The SUV didn't drive to me. It drove through the scene. The driver cranked the wheel, sending the multi-ton vehicle into a controlled spin. It slammed broadside into a mountain of wrecked cars, right next to the two BEI agents Pike had posted as snipers. The entire pile collapsed, burying the two men in a cascade of rust and steel. Before the truck even stopped moving, Elias was out. He didn't have a gun. He didn't need one. Two of Pike's men, startled, turned and raised their rifles. Elias moved faster than I thought possible. He wasn't a brawler. He was a surgeon. He moved inside the first man's reach, a quick, precise strike to the throat and another to the knee. The man went down, gagging. The second man fired, but Elias was already using the first man as a shield, spinning, and a sickening crack echoed as he disarmed the second man and broke his arm. It took 4 seconds. "Shoot him!" Pike shrieked, his composure shattering. "Shoot, Calderon!" The entire junkyard erupted. Pike's corrupted BI agents opened fire on Elias, who was now using the armored SUV as cover. "Naya, now." I didn't hear Kira's voice in my ear. I heard it live. Something small and black rolled into the center of the junkyard. A deafening bang and a flash of white light exploded in front of me, a flashbang. My vision went white. My ears were ringing. The world was just a high-pitched whine. A hand grabbed the front of my jacket, yanking me off my feet. "Move! Naya, move!" It was Kira. She was here, dressed in the same black tactical gear as Pike's men, but with no patches. She must have come in with Elias's team, a ghost in the chaos. She was dragging me toward the truck I'd driven in, toward the scrap metal container. "She's getting away." It was Draco's. His voice was a snarl. He'd lost his cool. The movie star was gone. A shot, a crack that sounded different, louder. The wooden side panel of the flatbed truck, right next to my head, exploded in a spray of splinters. I was shoved. Hard. Elias. He'd left the cover of the SUV and thrown his body between me and Draco's, slamming me flat against the massive truck tire. "Get behind it," he grunted. Another shot. Elias cried out. It was a sharp, punched-out sound, a grunt of pure agony. He stumbled, his hand flying to his left shoulder. "Elias!" I screamed. "I'm fine," he gritted out, but I saw the dark, wet patch spreading instantly, soaking the shoulder of his black sweater. He was hit. "Go." Kira was pulling me, her grip like iron. "We have to move, extraction plan, go." But as she pulled me, my eyes, blurred from the flashbang, saw something. Near Pike's command car, a small, huddled shape on the ground. It was Juniper. She was alive, her hands zip-tied, her face pale with terror. They had brought her. She was the bait, and in the firefight, they had just left her. "Juniper!" I screamed. I ripped my arm out of Kira's grasp. "Naya, no, it's too hot." "Cover me!" I yelled, and I ran. I've never been brave. I'm a waitress. I save tips. I hide from landlords. But seeing her there, seeing Elias bleeding, the part of me that was scared just burned away. I sprinted, low, zigzagging between piles of crushed car chassis. The air was full of noise and the smell of gunpowder. Pike's men were shooting at Elias, Dracos' men. The sea chain seemed confused. Some firing at Elias, some just watching. I slid on the gravel, grabbing Juniper. She was whimpering, hysterical. "Naya, oh God, Naya!" "It's okay. I'm here." My hands were shaking. I saw the tactical knife on the belt of one of the BEI agents Elias had taken down. I grabbed it and sliced through the plastic zip ties. "Get behind that engine block. Now. Do not move. Do not make a sound." I shoved her into the darkness behind a massive, greasy V8 engine, and she disappeared. I took a deep breath, my back against the scrap. The battle was a three-way mess. I risked a look. Elias was back behind the SUV. He was moving stiffly, his left arm completely useless, hanging at his side. He'd stumbled during his run, and he was limping badly, but he was still fighting, holding a pistol he must have taken from one of Pike's men in his right hand. He wasn't shooting, he was watching. His eyes scanned the chaos, ignoring the bullets sparking off the metal around him. He wasn't looking for Pike. He wasn't looking for Dracos. He was looking for me. Our eyes locked across the 50 yards of scrap. His face was pale with pain, but his eyes were sharp. "Are you safe?" My hand was trembling. I raised it, just high enough for him to see. I gave him the simple okay signal. I saw the tension leave his shoulders. He visibly relaxed, took a breath, then leaned out from behind the SUV and fired 3 precise shots, neutralizing another one of Pike's men. He needed to know I was safe before he could get his head back in the fight. "All right, you corrupt sons of bitches." Kira's voice. It wasn't from my earpiece. It was amplified, booming across the junkyard from a bullhorn. She was on the roof of her van, which was now parked on top of a pile of crushed sedans, giving her a high-ground vantage point. "You like economic integrity," she roared. "How about some real transparency?" There was a high-pitched electronic whine. On the highway that overlooked the junkyard, a massive digital billboard lit up. It usually advertised a 2-for-1 steak dinner or a local casino. Tonight, it flickered, turned blue, and then my desktop screen appeared. The fake email, subject urgent audit, manifest discrepancy, Onyx 9. And then, the tracker log, a massive glowing spreadsheet. Click verified D. Pike Terminal BEI Field Office. Click verified R. Miller, Terminal City Hall. Kira had hacked the billboard. She was broadcasting the unadulterated evidence, the sting, to the entire city. Down in the junkyard, the fighting stuttered. The C-Chain thugs, Dracos' mercenaries, stopped firing. They looked at Pike. They looked at the glowing billboard. They looked back at Dracos, who had gone pale. They were mercenaries. They were getting paid to smuggle chips for Dracos. They were not getting paid to be the fall guys for a corrupt federal agent whose name was now plastered 50 feet high on the highway. The double-cross was being double-crossed. One of the C-Chain, a man with the gull tattoo visible on his neck, slowly, deliberately, turned his weapon. He wasn't aiming at Elias anymore. He was aiming at Daryl Pike. "What are you doing?" Pike shrieked, his voice cracking. "He's the enemy! Shoot Calderon!" "You're a liability, officer," the C-Chain thug growled, his voice full of gravel. And then, the sirens. This time, it wasn't a trick. It was a flood. A dozen vehicles, their blue and white lights washing the junkyard in a pulsing, chaotic glow. They weren't BEI black and whites. They were the cars of the federal commerce wardens, Kira's real team. They poured in through the main entrance, forming a perfect, disciplined, tactical perimeter. They blocked every exit, but they didn't engage. They didn't storm the field. They just watched, a third official power, turning the junkyard into a pressurized trap. Pike was cornered by the C-Chain. Dracos was in a standoff with Kira, and Elias was limping toward me, using the scrap piles as cover. He was bleeding heavily now, his face gray with shock and pain. "Naya!" He grabbed my good arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "The feds are here. This is our exit." He gestured to a dark hole in the back fence. "We have to fade. Now, let them sort this mess. We'll be ghosts." I looked at him, his face streaked with grime and blood. I looked at the chaos. I looked at the unblinking, observing line of FCW vehicles. "No, Naya, this is not the time to argue. We're compromised." "If we run," I said, my voice as hard as the steel around us, "we're guilty. The headline tomorrow will be Harbor Boss Calderon and his accomplice escape federal raid. The truth will be buried with Juniper. I am not running." "What, then?" he hissed, leaning against a rusted car door. This? I looked up at a stack of rusted, hollowed-out shipping containers. Kira, I said, my hand going to the button mic on my collar. The mic. Is it still hot? Is it live? A crackle in my ear, loud and clear. Kid, what are you doing? Don't do it. Do it, I said. I started to climb. My hands were raw from my fall, but I found purchase. Naya. Elias tried to grab my ankle, but his wounded shoulder gave out. He grunted in pain. I hauled myself up, scrambling onto the flat, cold, wet roof of the top container. I was above the floodlights. I was visible to everyone. Pike's terrified men, Dracos' turncoat mercenaries, Kira's professional, observing FCW perimeter. And on the highway above, cars were stopping, people were getting out, their cell phones held up, recording the billboard and me. A crowd was forming at the fence line, night shift workers from the neighboring factories, drawn by the noise. I tapped the button mic. Kira, patch me through the bullhorn. You're insane. Done. I took a deep breath. My name is Naya Delgado. My voice, amplified 1,000 times, boomed across the junkyard, echoing off the mountains of scrap. The shooting stopped. Every sound except the sirens and the humming billboards ceased. My name is Naya Delgado, I shouted, my voice shaking but clear. I am an independent auditor for Harbor Logistics, and you are all witnesses to a crime. I pointed up at the massive glowing screen. Look at the billboard for the last 6 months. Councilman Robert Miller and Bureau of Economic Integrity, Officer Darrell Pike. That man, I pointed down, right at Pike, who froze, trapped in my spotlight, have been using Mauve Delta charity funds to cover for the smuggling operations of Pavel Dracos. They are the leak. They are the corruption. We didn't come here to make a deal. We came here to expose them. A murmur rippled through the crowd at the fence. The phones were all pointed at me. The story was shifting. I wasn't the harbor boss's woman. I was the whistleblower. Shooter! Dracos. And he had lost. The mask was gone. He was just a thug in a white suit. Shoot that little A! He raised his own pistol, a sleek, silver thing, and aimed it right at me. I was trapped. Nowhere to run. No. Elias roared. He launched himself, not at Dracos, but up the side of the container, his good arm grasping for a handhold, his body trying to reach me, to shield me. Dracos fired. The bullet missed me, ricocheting off the metal. But the force of his lunge, the desperate, impossible jump, it was too much for his wounded body. He lost his grip. He was knocked off balance, crashing 10 feet down onto a pile of scrap metal and broken glass. He didn't move. Elias? Another shot. Wawang. It wasn't from Dracos. It was from Kira. A warning shot. It kicked up sparks right at Dracos' feet, forcing him to jump back behind the bus. Next one doesn't miss. Pavel, Kira's voice boomed. The junkyard was frozen, a perfect 3-way stalemate. The FCW team, the real feds, were still holding the perimeter. They weren't coming in. They were observing. They had political orders. They were letting the rats fight in the trap. Pike was cornered by the sea chain. Dracos was in a standoff with Kira. And Elias was down. I scrambled down the container, my hands raw and bleeding. I ran to him. He was conscious, his face pale and slick with sweat and rain, the fall. His shoulder, it was bad. I fell to my knees in the mud and glass beside him. You climbed, he coughed, a grim, pained smile twisting his lips. Of course you did. I grabbed his hand, his right hand. It was covered in blood from his wounded shoulder. It was warm and sticky. I didn't care. I squeezed it, my anchor in the chaos. Don't you pass out, I whispered, my voice trembling. Don't you dare. We're almost there. We're at the part where we win. He squeezed back. His grip was weak, but it was there. He looked up at me, his dark eyes filled with a pain I'd never seen, and something else, something that looked like pride. And he held on. Kira's warning shot was still echoing off the scrap metal. The junkyard was a frozen moment of shock. "West side the hollow stack move," Kira's voice crackled. Not in my ear, but from the darkness behind me. She was laying down suppression fire, short, controlled bursts that were not aimed to hit, but to move. They sparked off the BEI vehicles, forcing Pike and his men to duck. "Elias," I said, panic rising. I grabbed his good arm. "Elias, up, we have to go." He was a dead weight. "I'm okay." He grunted, but his face was slick with sweat, his body already succumbing to the shock. "You are not okay. On 3. I hauled him up. His right arm slung over my shoulders. He cried out, a muffled sound of pure agony, as his wounded left side scraped against me. He was heavy, but the adrenaline was a fire in my veins. We were a broken, 3-legged thing, stumbling and sliding through the mud and glass. The air was alive with the zing of bullets passing us. Dracos was firing now. Pike's men were firing. We were the only targets moving. In here, Kira was holding open the door of a hollowed-out shipping container, one stacked on the bottom of a pile. It was a dark, steel cave. I practically threw Elias inside, and he collapsed onto the cold metal floor. I scrambled in after him, and Kira slid the heavy door shut, plunging us into a suffocating darkness. The world went silent. The roar of the junkyard, the sirens, the shouting, all of it was muffled, distant. The only sounds were our breathing. Mine, high and ragged, and Elias's, which was shallow and had a wet, hitching quality that terrified me. "Juniper, in," Kira commanded. I saw a small shape scramble in from the floor, where she'd been hiding. Juniper was here, crying silently. A click, and a harsh white beam of light blinded me. Kira had a tactical flashlight. She handed me a smaller one. "Hold this. On him, now." I did. The beam landed on his left shoulder, and my stomach dropped. The bullet had gone all the way through. It was a mess of torn black fabric and dark, pulsing blood. "Kira," I whispered. "It's a clean through," she said, her voice all business. She was ripping open a field medical kit. "That's the good news. The bad news is he's bleeding out. This is gonna hurt, boss." She uncapped a plastic bottle of antiseptic. "Just do it," Elias gritted, his eyes screwed shut. Kira poured the liquid. Elias's entire body went rigid. He didn't scream, but a low, animal sound was torn from his throat. Kira pulled out a suture needle and thread. "Naya, the light, I need it steady." My hand was shaking. The beam of light was dancing, painting frantic circles on his wound. I can't keep it still." "Get it together, kid. He doesn't have time for this." "It's my fault," I whispered, the words tumbling out, hot with tears. "It's my fault. I climbed. I made you climb. I put you on that container. I dragged you into the spotlight. Naya." His voice was a rasp. "I'm so sorry. Elias, I exposed you. I did this. "Naya, stop!" He coughed, a wet, rattling sound. Kira was already pulling the first stitch, her movements quick and brutal. Elias hissed, his back arching off the floor. He opened his eyes. They were black pools in the flashlight beam, filled with a pain I couldn't comprehend. "I was in the shadows long before you." His voice was a hoarse whisper, every word costing him. I was comfortable there, hiding, running, just like you were." He took a ragged, shuddering breath as Kira pulled another stitch tight. "You didn't drag me into the light." His good hand, his right one, shot out and found my wrist, the one holding the flashlight. His grip was weak, but it was there, and it stopped my shaking. The beam of light steadied. "You pulled me out," he breathed. "There's a difference." The words hit me harder than any bullet. It wasn't an absolution. It was a confession. He wasn't talking about the junkyard. He was talking about his life. He was talking about Leia. "But look at you," I sobbed, the tears dripping from my chin onto his chest. The news. They called me your woman, your trophy. I'm just a prop, a shield, a prize for Dracos or for you." It was the fear from the headline, the fear that I wasn't a partner, just property. "Kid, if you don't shut up, he is going to die," Kira snapped, not looking up from her work. No. Elias's voice cut through the darkness, sharp with authority, even through the pain. His grip on my wrist tightened. He tugged my hand, the one with the light, pulling me down, until the beam was just illuminating our faces, inches apart. "You are not a trophy," he said, his eyes burning into mine. "You are not a shield." He held my gaze, and in his, I saw the waitress, the girl with the cracked shoes, the girl who told off his men. He saw me. "You are my partner." He said the word partner like it was a vow, like it was the only true thing left in the world. The sound of the battle outside, the sirens, Kira's stitching it all dissolved. It was just us, just his eyes. I took the flashlight from my shaking hand and wedged it against the medkit box on the floor, angling the beam so it still lit Kira's work. My hand was free. I raised it, slick with his blood, and touched his face. His cheek was cold, damp, and rough with stubble. "Elias," I whispered. He met me. He used his good arm, his right, to hook around the back of my neck, pulling me down to him. It wasn't the boathouse. This was not a kiss of comfort. This was desperation. This was a kiss that tasted of gunpowder and blood and a terrifying, unshakable promise. It was slow and it was deep, a search for an anchor in the middle of a war zone. It wasn't about passion, not in that way. It was about synchronization. It was about me trying to pour every ounce of life and strength I had into him, and him trying to hold on to me as the one solid thing in a world that was coming apart. My fingers dug into his jaw, holding him, and his hand tangled in my hair, gripping the back of my head, holding me to him. I could feel his heart, a frantic, pained rabbit against my chest. I felt my own heartbeat stutter and then try to match his, to slow him down, to steady him. It was a long, breathless, silent promise. Survive. Just survive this. Okay, lovebirds. I'm out of thread and he's not getting any less shot. Kira's voice, dry as rust, shattered the moment. We broke apart. I was breathless, my forehead resting against his. He was pale, but a small, pained smile touched his lips. Kira was already packing her bloody supplies, her face a grim mask in the dim light. As touching as that was, the party's not over. Pike's cornered, Dracos is trapped, but my guys, the FCW, they're just holding the perimeter. They've got orders to observe, not to engage. They're waiting for Dracos and Pike to take each other out. This stalemate isn't going to hold. Dracos is going to break for the pier. He has to. His real shipment is there. "The truck," I said, my mind snapping back into focus. "The fake container, the tracker, he knows it's fake. His men looked inside." "He knows the container is fake," Kira said, checking the load on her taser. "But he doesn't know the tracker isn't. He thinks we're idiots." "Then let's use it," I said, the plan forming, cold and sharp. "Let's activate it, but we don't make it look like it's here. We make it look like the real Mauve Delta shipment is on the move from somewhere else. A virtual warehouse, a ghost." Elias's eyes opened. He was listening, his gaze sharp. "A digital decoy," Kira whispered, catching on instantly. "We make the tracker ping as in transit, but on a route away from the pier, Dracos will have to choose stay here and die in a federal trap, or cut his losses and chase his stolen product." "He'll chase the product," Elias said, his voice weak but certain. "It's his entire operation. His buyers are waiting. He'll take the bait." "And while he's chasing our ghost," I said, feeling the plan lock into place, "we burn them to the ground. We broadcast everything, not just the email, the real Atlas doc logs, Pike's entire HR file, his photo, his signature from the docs. We live stream it right on top of that billboard." "I need a terminal," I said to Kira. "My van, it's parked on the high ground. It's networked, but you can't just upload it. Naya, the Atlas doc is a secure system. It needs a live dispatcher authorization, a voice code, and a manual override. They'll know you're a fake." "I've been in that system for a week," I said. "I've heard them. I know the lingo. I know the call signs. I can do it." I looked at Elias. My voice, it won't shake. Not this time. "Naya," Elias said, You'd be impersonating a Port Authority officer on a live federal channel. That's a very serious crime. So is trying to murder someone with a forklift, I shot back. I can do it. I can help. It was a small, watery voice from the darkness by the door. Juniper, she was huddled there, her face streaked with tears, but her eyes were hard. I can help, she said again, stronger this time. I was his secretary. I know the radio protocols. I know the private call signs Dracos uses, the C-chain ones. She looked at me, a new, desperate resolve on her face. While you're faking the official dispatch, I can get on their channel. I can be the decoy. I can confirm the shipment's location. He knows my voice. He'll believe me. He'll believe I'm trying to save myself. She was terrified, but she was ready to fight. Kira looked at her, a slow, impressed smile dawning. A two-front war, digital and radio. I love it. Okay, this works. It's time, Kira said, moving to the container door. We need to get to the van. Elias, can you walk? I'll walk. He grunted. He pushed himself up with his good arm, and I was there, instantly, taking his weight, his arm draped over me. Wait, he said. He winced, his good hand fumbling inside his bloody jacket. He pulled something out, something from a deep inner pocket. It was a key. It was heavy, old, and made of brass. It wasn't a modern key. It was complex, mechanical, and looked ancient. He pressed it into my hand. My palm was still sticky and warm with his blood. What is this? I whispered. It's the manual override, he said, his voice low and urgent. For gate 17, the main gate. His dark eyes locked on mine. The System Atlas doc, it's all digital. Dracos can hack it, Pike can override it. But that is analog. That is mechanical. It's the old Calderon family lock. My father had it built. Only 2 people have a key, me and him. He closed my fingers over the heavy brass. If everything goes wrong, if they get past me, if they get to the pier, you don't fight them. You run. You get to the main gantry. There's a lockbox. That key will shut down the entire pier. It will physically sever the power to the cranes, the gates, everything. It's the kill switch. Elias, I can't, I breathed. This is your whole company. You're my partner, he said, and the words stopped all argument. If it goes bad, you use it. You lock that gate. Promise me. I promise. Okay, Kira said from the door, her voice a tense whisper. She peeked out. We have a window. The FCW line is shifting. They're moving to box in Pike. We can make it to the van. 30 seconds. Go. This was it. We were going back out. Elias straightened, his face a mask of pale, pained determination. I was at his side, my shoulder under his arm, taking his weight. He stopped me, just for a second. He turned, ignoring Kira, ignoring the danger. His good hand came up and cupped my face. He just looked at me. His gaze was so intense, so focused. It was like he was trying to photograph me with his eyes. He wasn't seeing the junkyard, he wasn't seeing the blood or the grime or the terror, and he was just looking, memorizing my eyes, the way my hair was matted to my face, the smudge of dirt on my cheek. He was imprinting me. He squeezed my hand, the one holding the key, one, hard. Final pulse. Ready, Kira hissed from the door. Elias didn't look away from me. Ready. He turned, took a deep, ragged breath, and together we moved back out into the war. The run to Kira's van was a blur of noise and terror. Elias was a dead weight on me, his good arm clamped over his bleeding shoulder, his breath coming in ragged, painful gasps. We half fell into the back of the van, a high-tech surveillance nest on wheels. Go, go, Kira yelled at Juniper, who scrambled into the driver's seat and peeled out, driving the van onto the high ridge overlooking the junkyard. Inside, I had Elias propped against a bank of monitors. The chaos was unfolding below us, a tactical ballet of light and shadow. Okay, Kira said, her voice dropping into a cold, professional calm. She handed me a headset. Naya, you're up. I'm activating the ghost tracker. It'll show up on their system as in transit. Route 21A. You are now dispatcher 449. Authorize it. I put the headset on. My heart was a drum, but my hands were rock steady. I looked at Elias. His eyes were closed, his face gray. But he was listening. He was trusting me. I took a breath. Atlas Command, this is Dispatch 449 code 90 Delta. I am confirming a manifest redirect on Mauve Delta. Authorization code Alpha 6539. Shipment is now hot, en route to secondary holding. My voice was flat, monotone, boring. It sounded exactly like the dispatchers I'd been listening to for a week. Perfect. Kira breathed. She pointed to Juniper. You're up, kid. C-chain channel, make him panic. Juniper, her face pale but her eyes burning, picked up a different radio. She took a shuddering breath. This is Secretary, she cried, her voice high and terrified and utterly believable. He's moving it. Calderon's moving it. The real shipment, he's double-crossing Pike. It's en route 21. I heard them. Oh, God, don't leave me here. Don't. We watched the scene below. Pavel Dracos, who had been in a standoff with Pike's men, froze. He looked at his radio. He looked at Pike. He heard Juniper's betrayal. He heard my official dispatch confirmation coming over his own hacked comms. It was the perfect pincer. His shipment was stolen. His federal asset was a liability. Get to the pier, Dracos roared at his men. He scrambled into his own car. Forget Pike, get the shipment. He tore out of the junkyard, his men right behind him, racing toward Pier 17. He took it. I breathed, ripping off the headset. He took the bait. Daryl Pike, his face a mask of pure panic, saw his entire plan, his immunity, his paycheck driving away. He screamed at his remaining BEI men. Back to the pier. Lock it down, help him. We have to beat them, I said, looking at Elias. Juniper, get him to my private doctor. Elias grunted, his voice weak. There's a card in my pocket. Go. No, Juniper said. I'm driving you. We're all going, Kira said, climbing into the passenger seat. Naya, back of the van, with him. Keep pressure on that wound. Juniper drove. She drove like a demon, taking shortcuts through alleys I didn't know existed. I was in the back. My entire body braced against the wall, my hands pressed hard on the makeshift bandage on Elias's shoulder. He was fading, his eyes half closed. Elias, I said, my voice sharp, stay with me. Don't you dare, we're not done. The key, he whispered, his good hand fumbling. I have it, I said, my other hand closing around the heavy brass key in my pocket. I have it. He'll use the digital override. Pike. He still has credentials. He can try, I said. We screeched to a halt at the secondary access gate of Pier 17. The main terminal was a circus. Dracos' cars were at the main gate, but the FCW, the real feds, had followed. They were in a standoff. Pike's car, however, had gone around the back. The auxiliary control room, Elias breathed. In the gantry tower, too. He's in there. Kira, cover him, I yelled. I jumped out of the van. I'm going. Naya. I ran like I'd never run in my life. I vaulted a turnstile and scrambled up the steel ladder of the gantry tower. The rain was starting again, cold and sharp. I burst into the small, glass-walled control room. Daryl Pike was there, his back to me. He was frantically typing at the main Atlas dock console. Come on, you piece of junk, override. He was trying to raise the main sea gate. He was trying to let Dracos escape onto the water. Pike, I yelled. He spun, his hand flying to his gun. He was too late. I wasn't there to fight him. I ignored him completely and ran to the back wall, to a panel of old pitted steel that said Emergency Mechanical Override. It was covered in dust. I shoved the heavy brass key into the lock. It was old, stiff. Get away from that, Pike lunged at me. I put my entire body into it, turning the key. There was a sound like a breaking bone, a deep, mechanical ka-chunk that shook the whole tower. Pike's console died. The lights in the room went red. And then A sound, a groan, a deep, earth-shaking screech of metal on metal, so loud it hurt my teeth. Outside, the massive 300-ton steel sea gate began to descend. It slammed into the water, sending up a wave that rocked the boats in the harbor. The pier was sealed. The cranes went silent. The power was cut. Pike and I were plunged into the red, flashing emergency lights. He just stared, his mouth open. "You locked it! You locked the pier!" Then the door burst open. The FCW not Pike's men, the real ones. They swarmed in, weapons raised. "Officer Pike, you are under arrest, hands." As they cuffed him, Pike just looked at me, his face a mask of utter defeat. "The Waitress," he whispered. I didn't watch. I ran back down the ladder, my legs shaking so hard I almost fell. The pier was chaos. The FCW was finally moving in. Temporary detention, all armed parties, on the ground now. Dracos was trapped. His cars were useless. The gate was locked. He saw me, and his face, the movie star face, twisted into a mask of pure rage. He ran, not at me, but at Kira's van, where Juniper was helping Elias out. He grabbed Juniper. He yanked her in front of him, a small, silver pistol pressed to her head. "That's enough," he screamed. "Everybody back, Calderon. You did this." The FCW line froze. Kira, from her sniper's perch on a nearby roof, had a clean shot, but she couldn't take it. Juniper was in the way. "You want me, Pavel?" Elias. He was standing, unsupported, his good arm held out, his left arm a bloody ruin at his side. He was hand empty. He was bleeding out, but he was standing. "You want the pier?" Elias said, taking a slow, painful step forward. "It's me. You've always wanted me. Let her go." "Elias, no!" I screamed. "A trade," Dracos laughed, a high, thin sound. "My life for yours, I like that." He shoved Juniper to her knees. "Come on, then, hero. Walk to me." Elias took another step. Dracos was focused on him, his eyes alight with triumph. He was savoring the moment. He adjusted his grip on the pistol, and for 1/2 of 1 second, he tilted his head, his wrist exposed. I was behind a stack of containers, maybe 30 feet away. My hand was in my pocket, the key, the heavy, old brass key. I didn't think. I acted. I threw it, underhand, fast and flat, like I was skimming a stone. The heavy, jagged piece of brass spun through the air and hit Dracos' exposed wrist with a sickening, solid thud. He screamed, a sound of shock and pain. The silver pistol clattered to the wet pavement. Elias didn't hesitate. He was already moving. He pivoted on his good leg, all his remaining strength, his entire body flowing into one final, brutal motion. He drove his right elbow, his good arm, directly into Dracos' solar plexus. The sound of the impact was a dull, wet thump. Dracos' eyes went wide. The air left his body in a single, explosive whoosh. He collapsed, folding like a cheap suit, and didn't move. It was over. A single, rogue shot, crack. Daryl Pike. He'd somehow gotten free in the chaos, grabbing a gun. He was aiming at me. Whang. A second shot, not from Pike. From Kira, she'd been waiting. Pike screamed and went down, his gun clattering, his hand clutching a new, bloody hole in his shoulder. Silence. The only sound was the rain and the sirens and the clicking of 100 sets of handcuffs as the FCW swarmed over Dracos, Pike, and the entire, shocked Sea Chain crew. Juniper was on her knees, crying not in fear but in relief. The dock workers, the ones who had been watching from the perimeter, who had seen my speech at the junkyard, who had recorded it all, they started to cheer. A low, hesitant sound at first, then a roar. I just stood there. My hand, the one that had thrown the key, was trembling. And then I started to laugh, a small, stupid, hiccuping laugh. The city. For the first time, it felt like the city was actually on my side. He was leaning against a concrete pylon, his eyes closed. The feds were around him, a medic trying to get to him. But he was waving them off. He was waiting. I walked toward him, moving through the pulsing blue and red lights as if in a dream. The world had tunneled. It was just him. He opened his eyes as I got close. His dark, pained gaze was full of everything. The boathouse, the junkyard, the fire, the key, all of it. All the things he couldn't say. I stopped in front of him. I raised my hand, the one that was still covered in his blood, and I placed it flat on his chest, right over his heart. I could feel it, a slow, steady, strong beat. He was alive. "We're done," I whispered. "We're done with this?" He covered my hand with his good hand, and held it there. "Now," I said, a small smile finding its way to my lips, "comes the hard part." He looked at me, a question in his pain-filled eyes. "Living," I said. The next week was a blur. The lighthouse, Kira's independent paper, published everything. The video from the junkyard, the billboard, Oren's logs, Juniper's testimony. Councilman Miller was indicted by the state, Darrell Pike, facing a mountain of evidence, pled guilty to everything. And Pavel Dracos, he was in federal holding, no bail, facing a list of charges so long he would never see the light of day again. The BEI and the FCW fought over who got the credit. Kira just leaked more files. Elias healed. 2 weeks later, he stood in front of his entire company. He announced a massive restructuring. He was dissolving Harbor Logistics' gray divisions. He was going fully legitimate. And to ensure it, he'd created a new, permanent and fully independent internal auditing division. Its new director, he said, was Miss Naya Delgado. My mom loved her new apartment. It was small, but it was clean, and it had a balcony that overlooked the water. The smell of salt, she said, was good for her. She was safe. I was safe. I'd even enrolled in a night school program at the community college, supply chain management. That night, I was on the roof of our new building, just watching the cranes move across the water. "They're going to give you a complex?" I turned. Elias. He was standing there. No bodyguards, no black coat, just jeans and a dark sweater, the same one from the boathouse. His arm was in a sling, but his eyes were clear. He was holding a greasy pizza box. "And they're just moving," I said, smiling. "I like to watch them work." He sat next to me on the ledge, our legs dangling over the city. He opened the box. Pepperoni, cold. "So," he said, handing me a slice, "the legendary Calderon kill switch. My father would be horrified." "Hey," I said, taking a bite. "It worked." It did. He smiled, a real, genuine smile. "I hear it's already a legend on the docks. They're not calling it the Calderon Key. They're calling it Naya's knuckleball." We laughed. We just sat there, eating bad pizza, high above the city that had almost killed us both. The air was cold, the wind sharp. "You're shivering," he said. He picked up a thick blanket he'd brought, the same dark wool as the one from the boathouse, and draped it over both of us. He pulled me in, not with passion, but with a simple, solid warmth. I leaned my head on his good shoulder. We sat in silence for a long time. "So," I said, my voice small, "the new office is big." "It's what you earned," he said, his voice a low rumble against my ear. "And you'll be there, I mean, at the pier." He turned his head. Our faces were very close. "I'm not going anywhere." "Good," I whispered. "Me neither." Is that an audit?" he murmured, his lips brushing my temple. "It's a promise," I said. He kissed me. It wasn't the desperate, frantic kiss from the junkyard. It was slow. It was calm. It was the easiest, most natural thing in the world. It was a kiss that tasted like cold pizza and a future. It was full of trust, and the quiet, shared smile in his eyes told me we were both, finally, safe. We just held each other, wrapped in a single blanket, two partners, finally at peace. It was all perfect. Until the next week, I was in my new office, my office. There was a plain manila envelope on my desk, no return address. Inside, there was no note, just a single, old, black and white photograph, slightly faded. It was a picture of 3 teenagers, standing on a pier, smiling, a young Elias. looking happier than I'd ever seen him, a young girl, his sister, Leia. And standing next to them, his arm slung familiarly around Leia's shoulder, was a smiling, handsome boy. A much, much younger Pavel Drakos. The file was closed. The case was over, but I had a feeling our story was just getting started. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Where are you tuning in from? I'd love to hear from you. Please, let me know your thoughts in the comments so we can all connect and share. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and like this video. And if you enjoyed this story, please support it by hitting that hype button so it can be heard by even more people.